Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the Scion Fanfics. Back with amazing fanfiction. This is the series of What If Deku Had Ghoul Genesis Quirk. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Are you sure? Inko Midoriya questioned the doctor sitting across from her. She was shocked. Izuku, sitting by her side, was practically vibrating with happiness. The doctor nodded to her question before showing her the results from Izuku's quirk analysis exams. We repeated the test twice, just to be sure, the doctor assured her. Little Izuku has a mutant quirk type. Hearing those words again, Izuku lit up the room with his smile as he looked on with wide eyes. So what is his quirk, doctor? Inko asked him, since growing a tail during preschool was what had brought them to the doctor's office in the first place. Well, it would seem that he possesses a transformation-like mutant quirk. It's unusual and rare, but sometimes a child might manifest a quirk that has nothing to do with either parent's quirks, the doctor explained as he pointed to a spot on the paper, drawing Inko's eyes to it. These tests indicate the presence of a mutant-type quirk, and by comparing it to previous records, it seems to be a body enhancement one. His strength and reflexes are above those of the average 4-year-old kid. Those aspects of his quirk are always present, so we are confident that it is a mutant-type quirk. What about his tail and eyes? Inko questioned as she hugged her beaming child. It won't hurt Izuku, will it? No need to worry, the doctor reassured her, that is part of his mutation. Apparently, Izuku is able to freely grow and control that appendage. It requires a level of focus to activate and maintain it. Concerning his eyes, we examined them, and there is nothing wrong with them besides the black sclera. We assume his eyes are a sign of when he uses his appendage, which is why we classified it as a transformation aspect of his quirk. He may have some trouble controlling it for a while. But he should get used to it after enough practice. Placing his note aside, he looked at Inko with a pinch of excitement in his voice. What I've found to be interesting is Izuku's quirk transformation aspect. His mutation enhances his body, allowing him to grow that appendage. It's quite a fascinating development to see two different categories in one quirk. We had only one other case in the Okayama prefecture a year ago. Apparently, the boy had a transformation quirk that could affect others. It was quite fascinating, but I digress. Inko uncomfortably adjusted her sitting position. Should we fill out 2 quirk registries for Izuku then? Inko asked him. The doctor grimaced for a moment before responding. Most kids are diagnosed and registered all at once before entering elementary school. It's a standard part of the physical exam, after all. It is done so the quirk has time to further develop and allows us to have a more accurate idea of its capabilities, the doctor informed her. I'd suggest waiting until then in case there are other aspects of his mutation quirk we are unaware of. After scratching his mustache, he added, I also recommend that you schedule a monthly checkup on Izuku's development with me till then, so we know what we are dealing with. He quickly added before Inko could react, I assure you that there is nothing to worry about. I just wish to monitor Izuku's quirk development since mutation quirks are rare, and I wish to better understand its effect on his body so I can better help him if the need arises. Inko sighed in relief. Thank you, doctor, for your time. We will see you next month, then. Inko bowed before standing and leaving the office with an ecstatic 4-year-old. When Izuku was dropped off at preschool the next day, he was excited to show off his quirk to Kaken. He finally knew what his quirk did, which just made him more motivated to show it off to his friends. Everyone was charmed by seeing the small explosions Kaken created when he got his quirk. He wondered how they would react to his quirk this time. He immediately sought out his ash-blonde friend, and upon seeing him, he made his way over to him. Kaken! I got my quirk tested, Izuku announced excitedly. Upon hearing those words, Katsuki smiled excitedly at the news from his friend, but he hid his curiosity with a snarky remark, all you can do is just grow a tail, Deku. What is there to analyze? Katsuki asked while dismissing his remark, many people have tail quirks, Deku, there is nothing complicated to test. This was not how he expected things to go. From what he remembered, the doctor was thrilled about how rare his quirk was. He even said that he wanted to watch his growth. That must mean something, right? The doctor said that my quirk is more than a tail. Izuku pleaded. Oh yeah? Katsuki dared him with a smirk, let's see it then. Okay. Izuku exulted at the chance to prove his claims right. He picked a pebble from the floor and closed his fingers around it. This was the chance he had to prove to Kaken how cool his quirk was. If he did that, he would be as cool as Kaken. After closing his eyes, Izuku chucked the pebble away towards the tree line. Katsuki expected to see the usual failed display of strength. This time, however, Katsuki and the rest of the class, including the teachers, were all surprised by where the pebble ended. The boy who last week was incapable of throwing a ball straight just threw that pebble across the entire schoolyard and over the fence. See? I told you I had more than a tail. Izuku beamed a smile at the display of his new quirk. I am strong too. Katsuki was shocked by what he saw. How did Deku get this strong? Is his quirk more than just a shitty tail? His mind was reeling from the possibilities. Just last week, Deku cried for 5 minutes after tripping on a vine. Katsuki was in disbelief at the implications this would cause to their friendship. Did Deku just become a challenge to him? He was puzzled by what this could mean. He finally found someone who could actually follow him. Someone who could finally match his pace. To his surprise, that someone was the same boy who had been following him for the past 4 years. Failing to make words from what he just saw, Katsuki finally said it. Maybe there is something more about your quirk after all. Katsuki snickered. Your quirk is still shit compared to mine, but it's way better than these extras. He grinned as he set off a series of pops with his hands. Izuku stared at Katsuki as he turned and moved away. Izuku was expecting something different from his friend now that he had gotten his quirk. Especially now that he had proven that his quirk was cool. He hoped that now that he was not quirkless, he would be treated differently. He really hoped not be left behind anymore. What are you standing there? Come on, Deku, now that you have a passable quirk, let's see what else you can do, Katsuki said over his shoulder after he noticed that Deku was not following him. That caught Izuku by surprise. Hearing what Kaken said to him a few moments ago, he truly believed Kaken saw his quirk as something useless. But from what he just heard, it really gave him hope that things would be different from now on. Thank you, Kaken, Izuku beamed before following his friend. For the next few weeks, Izuku kept trying to control both aspects of his quirk properly. The two being distinct made it difficult to get a grasp on using them both at the same time, but he tried anyway. Sometimes Izuku would try to control his strength by squishing a balloon between his hands while he used his tail to knock his hero figurines one by one. The outcome most of the time was that he would lose concentration with his tail making it disappear, or he would not notice his strength and blow up the balloon right on his face. Other times, he would try to grab one of his toys with his tail, but he would apply too much force and break his toy in the process. It was the last time he used his All Might collection as training material. Working hard, Izuku? Inko smiled at her son from the doorway. Yeah, Izuku replied sheepishly, I'm going to learn to use my quirk and become a hero. Inko laughed at his display. Ever since he'd watched All Might's debut video online, her son had decided he wanted to be a hero when he grew up. The fact that he has a strength quirk that seemed similar to All Might only made the young boy more determined. I know you will, Izuku. I am so proud of you, baby, Inko encouraged her son as she smiled proudly at her little boy, but do not exert yourself too much. You are still growing, she added before looking at his smashed toys. She then realized that Izuku had no one to teach him how to use his quirk due to his mutation. She decided she was going to help him train his quirk control. Izuku, what do you say of us going out so you can practice your quirk? Izuku beamed at his mother as he unconsciously jumped half a meter into the air. Upon arriving at the park an hour later with an excited Izuku, Inko took a seat on a bench close by. Izuku, holding Inko's hand, smiled as he looked up at her. So, Izuku, I know how difficult it must be to control your quirk. Especially since your quirk is nothing like mine, but I will try my best to help you exercise your control. Izuku grinned as he watched his mother pull out a water bottle from her purse. Here, she placed it next to her on the bench. It's not exactly the same, but when I was your age, I used this to practice my quirk. She gestured to the item next to her. Izuku, try and pull the bottle towards you. Use your tail to grab the bottle without letting the water spill from the top, and bring it to you. Then after that, place it back here without moving from where you are standing. She hoped that this silly exercise would help her son. At his age, she used the same exercise to improve the control of her quirk. She would try to pull the water bottle towards her without letting it fall on the ground, and after she managed to keep it from falling, she would then fill the bottles with water to practice her pull weight limit. That was something silly she created to practice her quirk that was cheap, easy, and not dangerous. She had no idea if this would work for Izuku. Their quirks were nothing alike, but if she could help him control his strength and concentration, it would be a win for her. To her surprise, Izuku was enjoying his training. He was attempting to get the bottle by wrapping the end of his tail around it, but then whenever he tried to lift it off, it would either slip down or he would press it too hard and spill water from it. No matter how many times he failed, he would keep that smile on his face. To be young again, Inko sighed fondly as she watched her son, already filled with energy again. Inko nodded as she leaned on her seat and watched her baby extend his tail and attempt to grab the water bottle again and again. Inko arrived home hours later with a tired Izuku in her arms. Apparently, using his tail for long periods of time drained him of his stamina. That was something she should mention to the doctor during their next visit. She had decided to call it a day after a few hours when Inko heard Izuku's stomach growl. They arrived home in the last hour of daylight. Her little boy was overjoyed about his training and had been mumbling all the way home about other training methods and about techniques he would try with his tail when he got used to controlling it. Her little boy had such an overactive imagination. She had just crossed her front door when Izuku jumped down from her arms onto the floor and headed to watch the hero news. She was glad this hadn't changed after Izuku got his quirk. "Izuku, what do you want for dinner?" asked Inko from across the room. "Katsudon." "Of course, dear," she laughed. What else would she expect from him? She was relieved. Her Izuku was still the same as ever. She didn't notice how worried she was in the past few days about her baby boy. Gaining your quirk was a big deal in life, and for Izuku to gain a mutated quirk that had nothing to do with hers or Hisashi's? She worried about how it would have affected him. However, she now realized all that worrying was for nothing. Her son loved his quirk, and he liked to show it off to anyone he could. He even started to interact more with the other kids at preschool, so she was told. Her baby boy was making new friends. That was everything she could ask for. Her little man was growing so fast that she feared that she would miss his growth once again if she were not present in his life. "I'm done," he cheered. "You can go get ready for your bath then." "Okay." He scurried from the table full of energy. It seems the training lifted his mood. Inko stood to clean the dishes. She noticed something unusual when taking her son's bowl. He left all the onions uneaten. "That's a dumb idea, Deku," huffed Katsuki to disguise his worry. "Nah, Kaken. I can do this." "Just like Lariat," exclaimed Izuku, high up in the tree, "I know how to do it. I saw it in an old video of him." That was what he said as he attempted to swing to the next tree using his tail. A few weeks ago, Izuku watched a documentary that made a few profiles on Pre-All Might heroes and the hero society of those times. During that hour-long film, they mentioned a hero who used to swing around the buildings using his quirk. He actually was one of many heroes who used their quirks in non-orthodox ways to move around. Of course, when learning about that, the little hero nerd decided to try it out by himself and see if he could do the same. For the next few weeks, he had been training to extend his tail beyond his current limit, even if it was for just a second. After 3 weeks, he was successful in dragging Katsuki to the forest during autumn to try his new move. "I can do it, Kaken," Izuku declared as he jumped from his branch and extended his tail towards the next tree. He couldn't do it. "Deku!" screamed Katsuki as he ran to check on the fallen boy. "Damn it, Deku, I told you your idea was shit. You didn't even manage to get close to the other tree. If you are hurt, I will get another earful from the hag, and you are gonna pay for it." Katsuki took a step back when he saw the water flow on Izuku's face. He was holding his broken arm with tenderness. "Shit! He has done it again." It's been around a year since Izuku got his quirk. In that time, Izuku became a little more daring with his choices. Gone was the meek boy who followed him around like those extras. Now that he had his quirk, Izuku kept coming up with wild ideas to test out his and others' quirks. Last week, they all gathered at the creek and tested whether Tsubasa could swim better by using his wings while submerged. It went as well as one could expect apparently. Knowing how to fly did not translate to knowing how to swim. It took them 10 minutes to drag the winged boy back to shore, and it took another 5 minutes for Izuku to stop mumbling about hydrodynamics and wingspan. For better or for worse, on that day, they learned that Tsubasa's wings worked well as floaters, which was what prevented the boy from drowning on that day. "Inko, it's been a month already? How fast time passes," the doctor laughed at her with a familiarity only possible for someone very acquainted with the family. "Not yet," replied Inko without formalities. "I am here to see the results from Izuku's last exams." They truly had become familiar with each other. Next week was going to be Izuku's 15th official schedule appointment, and by the 7th visit, most of the formalities had dropped. "And doctor, something happened to Izuku this week, again." "Oh, right. So before you tell me anything that happened to Izuku, I wish to report the results from Izuku's last visit." His eyes were glimmering with his findings. He pulled up Izuku's medical binder, a binder that she had become very familiar with and that much resembled one of Izuku's quirk notebooks. "In your last visit, you told me that you were worried about young Izuku's appetite, right?" He carefully fixed his glasses as he read his notes. "From your words, Izuku has been leaving food on his plate that he loves to eat, and when I asked him the reason why, he said it tastes bad. After that, I performed a few exams to check his palate response and blood samples to perform a comprehensive metabolic panel and complete blood count." He looked up from his notes and turned his chair towards the cabinet behind him. Checking over a stack of documents, he pulled a file from among them and returned to face Inko. First things first, Izuku is healthy for a kid his age. There is nothing out of place in his blood results. I can positively say that the changes in his diet have not impacted his health. In regards to his palates, he does seem to have had a mutation on his papillae. This is something commonly seen in people with mutant quirks. As he grows older, his body will slowly change to better accommodate his quirk, which is one of the reasons why I asked to accompany his quirk growth. All we can do in this situation is to wait and see what other changes might happen. Inko had been listening to every word he said. It was her son he was talking about, after all. There was no way she would not worry about her baby's well-being. But maybe she was acting a bit silly for stressing and worrying so much if the doctor was saying nothing was wrong. But Izuku was never a picky eater before, and now, he could not even stand the taste of his favorite food. "Are you sure, doctor?" she hesitantly asked. "I know how I must be sounding right now, but with these changes, there is nothing I can do but worry," she managed to tell him while holding back her tears. The doctor took a deep breath before his eyes mellowed. He placed his notes on his desk and looked into Inko's eyes. "Inko, Izuku is all right," he firmly stated. "He is a growing, healthy boy, and you are doing great at taking care of him. You have nothing to worry about. I know it must be difficult seeing these unfamiliar changes in him, but that is why we are monitoring his development. So if there is anything wrong, we will know before anything happens." In this past year, he learned 3 things about the Midoriyas. Izuku loved anything related to quirks. Inko Midoriya was a worrying mother who would do anything for her son, and if it were not impossible, they would have a second quirk called crying. After 5 minutes of waiting for her tears to dry, he started to clear his throat in hopes of being able to change topics and move their conversation forward. "Mrs. Midoriya," he waited for her to compose herself, "the last topic from your previous visit. You brought to my attention that Izuku would get exhausted after regrowing consecutive appendages. Cases of transformation quirk that drain the user's stamina normally point towards an energy conversion of some sort. We tried to identify the composition of his appendage, and from what we were able to find, Izuku's appendage uses his cells to grow, and since it disintegrates after a few minutes, he needs to grow a new one every time he activates that part of his quirk. That drains his energy every time he creates a new appendage." Inko took a deep breath after listening to him. "Is Izuku in any danger from that?" Her knuckles went white as she tried to keep a calm facade to the doctor. She already had an emotional burst today, she needed to stay calm, and she had to hold herself together. For her son, for Izuku. Technically, feeling exhausted is what keeps him from getting hurt. That level of body change requires a lot of nutrients, and normally, the extra appendages are absorbed back into the main body to conserve most of the energy. In Izuku's case, the cells rapidly degenerate after their formation. Due to his age, the new cells do not have enough energy to take from, so they take what they can and survive while it lasts. This lets him use the appendage for a few minutes before the energy runs out, but frequent consecutive uses will drain him of his relatively low energy. Fortunately, after a meal and a few hours of rest, Izuku will be back to normal. What he has is basic quirk exhaustion. I expect that the exhaustion will stop as Izuku grows older and his body grows stronger enough to handle that level of energy consumption. In simple terms, as it is now, Izuku only has the energy to grow his appendage 3 times before feeling exhausted. Give it a few years, and it will be unnoticeable for him unless he pushes it to his limits. She released a breath she didn't know she was holding. "I see. That is good to hear," she gave him a strained smile. "With that out of the way, you said you had a few things to say about Izuku's quirk development," he said, relaxing his eyes. "Yes. Well, where do I start? It's been 2 weeks since the hospital doubled Inko's shift. Now she had to leave Izuku at the Bakugus before going to work. She was against that at first, but Mitsuki insisted that it was not a big deal to take care of Izuku and that little Katsuki loved spending time with Izuku, even if he didn't show it. The 2 boys have always been close to each other, but since Izuku got his quirk, he came out of his shell with the other kids. The energy that he showed her when they played at home was now being used outside. That brought its share of troubles. Last week, Izuku and his friends arrived drenched in water after playing close to the river. According to Izuku, they were testing their quirk's abilities on the water. The month before that, Izuku made a habit of falling from trees. Apparently, he wanted to practice his climbing skills and see from which height he could safely land. She could swear that Izuku was not like that from before he had gotten his quirk. She was happy that her son was having fun, but she couldn't stop worrying about his safety. "What can I do with you, Izuku?" she exasperated. After the incident where Izuku crashed into the living room at 2 a.m. because he wanted to check if he had night vision, She prohibited any quirk testing inside their house, and asked Mitsuki if little Katsuki could keep an eye on her son if he ever got any dangerous ideas. Mom! Mom! Izuku shouted as he knocked the door open. And here he is, she mentally smiled. You are not going to believe what happened today. Izuku kept jumping and waving his arms to call her attention. When she turned to look at her energetic son, she had to stop herself from having another panic attack from what she was seeing. Her son was covered in mud, his shirt torn, and she could see little sticks sticking out from his green curled hair. But the most alarming feature she was seeing was the big splat of blood on him. In an instant, Inko was on her knees in front of Izuku. Her hands were moving around him, checking each millimeter of his body for any sign of damage. Her eyes were searching for the smallest signs of bruises. These checks had become second nature to Inko since Izuku had become more active with his quirk. She was used to seeing Izuku arriving home with a few bruises and scrapes, but this was the first time she had seen him with any sign of blood. Oh my god! Izuku, what happened to you? Izuku kept staring at his mother's panic without letting go of his wide smile. Inko stopped and placed both of her hands on his shoulders to hold herself together. Where are you hurt, baby? She asked while she was still able to speak over her crying sobs. Her breathing stopped as she waited for Izuku's reply. Those were the longest 5 seconds in Inko's life. I fell from a tree and broke my arm, he beamed. Inko died inside after hearing those words. And it got better, he added. When I saw Izuku like that, I couldn't contain myself. My mind went to the worst possible outcome. I panicked. She tried to stop her tears with her trembling hands, and her voice cracked while she told him what happened. She looked like she had been told that her son just died in a tragic accident. When I heard he broke his arm, I just stopped listening. My baby broke his arm. He's too young to have a broken arm. But then he told me that it was fixed. He said it like all he did was spill water on his shirt. Inko chuckled when her tears stopped as if she had run out of things to cry. Well, Inko, he felt awkward at that moment. He adjusted his glasses and coughed under his mustache. What seems you are telling me is that Izuku has some level of regeneration, I assume. He waited for her to nod. I also assume that you confirmed his claims that his arm was fixed? Another nod from her, yes. After seeing him like that, I rushed to the hospital. There, they checked his wrist and arm, but they said nothing was broken and an X-ray was not required, so they sent us home. He contemplated her words. I do not wish to rush things without proper testing, but I can guess that this quick regeneration is just part of his appendage growth. His body must be unconsciously creating more cells whenever he takes damage. If this process is similar to how his appendage operates, it will consume his energy in proportion to the damage taken, so depending on the size, Izuku will feel tired afterwards, and if it is too serious, the wound will stabilize instead of closing. But that is also a good thing. He tried to give her some hope after he revealed the fact that her son just got another excuse to be reckless. Inko was tired. Inko loved her son above anything else, but she was unsure if her heart could take any more surprises. The visit to the doctor really took a toll on her. To imagine that her Izuku would lose the ability to eat certain foods scared her, but knowing that her son would be able to heal from any injury should be something to calm her, but it just increases her anxiety. Since Izuku decided to be a hero, she decided to try her best to support him and his dream. She indulged him in his hero play, she watched the hero videos with him, she bought him the hero toys, but once he got his quirk, it was then that things became real to her. Her baby got his quirk, and he would become a hero. She didn't know how to react. Of course, she was happy that her baby got his quirk, but now he was getting hurt more often. She was not sure she had gotten used to the fact that Izuku could be in danger. Her mother's instincts were clashing with her supportive side, and she didn't know what to do. There was only one thing she could do in this situation. Call Mitsuki. Hello, Bakugo household. Mitsuki speaking. Hello Mitsuki, it's Inko. She wasn't sure this call was a good idea. Ah, Inko, how have you been? I hope that Katsuki hadn't caused any trouble for you or little Izuku. I tell you what, that boy can get on your nerves sometimes. No, that is not why I called you. She took a deep breath. I want to talk to you about Izuku. Hearing Izuku's name, Mitsuki knew this was not a casual call. Something about Izuku was worrying Inko, and she had no idea what to do. What about little Izuku? He has been a delight while here. Katsuki might not say, but he really enjoys Izuku's company. How do you manage it? Mitsuki wasn't sure she heard it right. Sorry, dear, what did you say? This time, Inko didn't stutter. How do you manage, knowing that your son can get hurt? Mitsuki could hear her friend's emotion through the phone. Inko? What is going on? I'm not sure I can handle this, she cried, seeing Izuku getting hurt. What do you mean by that? What happened to Izuku? She started to get worried. Just that morning, she saw Izuku playing with his friends. What could have happened to him in the meantime? Inko started to sniffle. Since he got his quirk, I just see him getting hurt. I'm not sure I can keep going like this. Seeing him in danger, Inko went quiet for a moment. Mitsuki could hear her wiping her tears. How do you do it, Mitsuki? How do you get over the possibility of Katsuki getting hurt? I don't. These feelings never go away. Inko didn't expect that answer. Since Katsuki got that dangerous quirk, I never stopped worrying about his safety. Every day, I worry about what might happen if his explosions harm him in any way. He is so headstrong for his age that I fear that he might charge into a situation that he might be clueless about. So, yes. I fear for his safety every day, and no matter how long it passes, this feeling will never go away. Her voice was calm, as if she were reminiscing about something she already made peace with. But Inko dear, I have faith in him. Inko could feel the warmth from those 5 words coming from Mitsuki's voice. Faith in him. Mitsuki got Inko's attention. After running out of options, she would take any hope given to her. Yes, the one thing I know about my son is that he is strong and never gives up. He acts the way he is because he has faith in his skills, and so do I. I will trust that he knows how much he can do, and if he does not know, I have faith that others will look after him. Inko dear, have faith in Izuku's abilities and that he knows what he is doing. And when he needs help, be there for him. That is all we can do as their parents. Mitsuki could hear Inko's breathing normalize. She was sure she managed to calm down her friend with that speech. She wasn't used to being that open about her feelings to anyone other than Masaru, but Inko had always been the one to wear her feelings on her sleeves, and this time she needed help to sort those feelings out. She just needed one final push. No matter what, he is always going to be your little boy. And the dam that was Inko Midoriya finally broke. Thank you, Mitsuki, she was crying, not tears of joy nor tears of sadness, but tears of acceptance. She could feel the worries and anxiety leaving her eyes. Inko's chest never felt lighter in her entire life. No problem, Inko, I am here for that. That was the least Mitsuki could do for her friend. It was the start of the evening when Izuku arrived home from his playdate with Katsuki. She was able to calm herself down after her conversation with Mitsuki over the phone. All she needed now was to talk with Izuku about what the doctor said to her. Hey Izuku, how was your day with Katsuki? She asked him when he arrived, scampering into the kitchen. It was great, he stated. Me and Kaken tried to see which could knock trees faster. His eyes beamed as if he just told her that he met Santa and All Might on the same day. Of course they did that. Kaken explosions were so bright. He was so cool. Then I tried to use my tail to punch the tree down. It was kind of hard. The tree was hard, but after I punched it started to move, and Izuku was entering one of his rumbles. She had to stop him before he got lost in his talking. Did you have fun? Yes, he quickly replied, forgetting what he was previously talking about. So, Izuku, today I went to talk with the doctor about what happened to you last week, and your quirk. Hearing the word quirk, Izuku snapped his head and gazed towards his mother. She got him. He was now dedicating all of his attention to Inko's next words. Your quirk uses your energy to grow your tail every time you do that. That is why you get so tired after using it for a while. He also said that your quirk also heals you faster by doing the same thing. It was now time to address him about what she had been keeping to herself. She knelt down in front of him before speaking. Izuku, the doctor said that if you get too hurt, your quirk might not work, since it requires a lot of energy to fix you. He said it might get better as you get older, but till then, can you be more careful when you are outside, Izuku? That was it, she said it. Now all she feared was his reply. Yes, he blatantly nodded. She didn't know what else to expect. He was her baby boy. Of course, he would listen to her. He always listened to her worries. She hugged her son as if it were the first time she had done that. Oh, Izuku, you are going to be a wonderful hero. Yes, she could do this. She could have faith in her son. Izuku was hungry that day. He had a hard time trying to swallow his food that morning. For the past year, almost every food gradually tasted more like sand and coal. He was aware that his quirk would change his taste buds, but he always thought that the change would stop at some point. It never did. Since he didn't wish to worry his mother about this, he decided to hide how much different food tasted to him now. In the past, he could easily ignore the foul taste, but in the past weeks, it had been getting difficult to keep the food inside. Because of that, he was back to his old anxious self, but no matter what, he had to power through because when he became a hero, something like an upset stomach shouldn't slow him down. It had been 4 years or so since Izuku got his quirk. Much like how Kaken manifested his quirk, Izuku's quirk emerged while they were all in class. He felt an odd tingling sensation coming from his neck. After he gave in to that sensation, his eyes turned black, and a red appendage burst from his back. Everyone, including his teachers, was in awe, and even Kaken said that he was tired of waiting for his quirk to manifest. He could hear in his voice how happy he was for Izuku. Izuku would finally be able to play the hero in their games. He could finally enjoy having a quirk and playing with them, just like everyone else. It was during a summer break evening when all came to an end. He still remembered the events that led to that day's event. He, Kaken and several of their friends had decided to play heroes and villains like they usually did. They all arranged to meet at the local park's playground, and due to it being in the late afternoon, not many adults were present, which made it a perfect location for them to play around with their quirks. This was a common sight to them, running around with their quirks on display, showing off the abilities they honed for the past 4 years. Not that it was technically legal to do that, but most adults would turn a blind eye towards young kids playing with their quirks, as long as no one would be hurt. It was, as they said, let kids be kids. Do you think you can escape us, Deku? Shouted Katsuki. Yes. Izuku laughed back at them. You'll never catch me. Izuku's mobility was aided by the 2 tails growing from his back. It's been a few months since Izuku had enough energy to grow a second appendage without passing out. He was old enough now to have a decent energy reserve for his quirk, and he could now keep his appendage functional for a few hours before it withered away. After learning about his new limits, he decided to try to copy Lariat again, but this time he would use his second tail to anchor himself in case he accidentally fell. Apparently, that was exactly what he needed. Feeling the wind on his face, Izuku got into the rhythm of the motions. Left tail extend, right tail retract, right tail extend, left tail retract. This was what he was missing, just that extra reach and control he lacked all those years ago. He really had to thank his mom for teaching him to control his strength and coordination. He still had a long way to go for his control to be perfect, but for now, it was enough to entertain his childish ideas. Though maybe he should have worked on his inability to change course while moving at high speeds. Crack. Izuku fell face-first into the ground. Even if he was able to extend his appendages to move, he lacked the finesse to move them on the fly. So when he heard the tree branch break, all he could do was watch as he tripped into the dirt. Boom. Ah. Got you. Gloated Katsuki with an explosion. It doesn't matter if you can find me, you're too clumsy to escape. Ah, you got me there, Kaken, Izuku replied, and brushed off the dirt from his face. Too bad that the branch broke. Giving a huff at his friend's display, Katsuki was not satisfied with the current outcome. DMNU, Deku. To stumble, then get caught, how am I supposed to beat you if you keep making it easy to win? This time wasn't his win, but this wasn't his loss either. Sure, Deku could run longer than him, but what's the point if he couldn't run straight, right? Sure, if it wasn't for that branch, Deku would have found another way to lose to him. Get up. Let's get back to the rest of the extras. This was a game they came up with. It was a mix of hide and seek and tag, where it had to look for the others, and once the person was found, it then had to catch it. The game didn't make much sense, but it was enough to entertain the group of kids, and it allowed them to have fun with their quirks. Izuku really didn't care much about winning the game. For him, the enjoyment was in using his quirk to escape his pursuers. Feeling the blood pump into his limbs as he ran, the adrenaline that he felt being chased down. It was pure euphoria for Izuku to use his quirk in those conditions. The best part was when he discovered a new aspect of his quirk. It was the month before entering elementary school. That day, Izuku was woken up by a blast of unfamiliar smells. He could feel the fresh breeze coming from outside, the detergent from his bedsheets, and the smell of fresh plastic emanating from his hero collection. But one aroma stood out from the rest. He wasn't sure what it was strong, floral, and acidic. The strange thing was that Izuku never noticed those smells before. Curious, he decided to sniff out that scent. After a few tries, he was able to lock down on its location. Being led by this irresistible aroma, Izuku left his bed and headed towards the kitchen. Arriving at the edge of the table, Izuku made his way towards an open seat. There, he noticed that the source of the smell originated from a mug. Being dragged by his curiosity and hunger, Izuku climbed into the seat and reached for it. How could such darkness produce a smell like that? It would be best to ask his mom about it before he tasted it, but his curiosity got the best of him, and he took a sip from it. Once the black liquid touched his tongue, his entire body stopped moving. Izuku's eyes dilated, his mind was finally clear from his usual thoughts, hero names, quirk analysis, All Might, his breakfast, and that his quirk just showed another ability. All that just vanished as he savored his drink. Izuku? Izuku, can you hear me? Izuku dash. And like that, his mind snapped back into the present. He turned his head, disoriented from his abrupt return to reality. He saw his mother looking at him with an unsure expression. Mom. What? Izuku, what are you doing? Why are you drinking my coffee? So that's what it was. He looked at her while holding the warm mug in between his hands. Nothing, just drinking it, he said, as it was normal for a 6-year-old to drink coffee in the morning. Izuku wasn't sure if he could consider what he was doing cheating, since his heightened sense of smell was not something that he could easily turn off. For now, he would fully enjoy the challenge of locating his friends by smell alone. They kept playing until evening approached, and like all things, it had to come to an end. This time, that end was due to Katsuki. He, of course, began to pick on another kid they found at the park. The reason? Because he had a weak quirk. Normally, the parents would deal with this problem, but due to the summer break, no one was near the park. Izuku watched as he clenched his fists and marched over to block the path between Katsuki and the crying child. Kaken. Knock it off. That is not nice. Izuku got ready to hold his ground. He knew that his actions would probably be in vain, but he still had to try to stop this fight. Kaken smiled with a toothy grin and fired a few pops on his palms. Izuku called forth his 2 tails and used them to try to shield himself from Katsuki's explosions. "Oh ho, you mad, Deku?" he said as he began crackling explosions towards them. "Stop it. You already made him cry. I won't let you go further than this." Izuku shrieked as he tried to hold his ground. Being Katsuki's oldest friend, he was hoping that it would give him an edge in persuading him. He was not aware that his black eyes, which signaled the activation of his quirk, were fiercer than normal. Seeing them made Katsuki fire up. In his mind, this was just another challenge. Just another game to see how far they could take their quirks. "Oh come on. If you want to fight, so be it," Katsuki said as he got ready to fire an explosion at Izuku. Izuku could feel his stomach eating him from the inside. He wasn't sure he could keep himself straight while being under such pain. He just wanted to have fun with his friends before the break ended, but now he had to keep Katsuki away from this kid. "Stop this, Kaken," he pleaded, leaning forward. "Or what?" Katsuki said as he propelled forward, right arm arched to give his starting punch. "I said stop," Izuku shouted as he pounced towards Katsuki, using his tails to leap off the ground. He hoped that tackling the boy would give an opportunity for the kid to run. At that instant, Izuku just wanted to eat. To be able to have a proper meal like in the old times. To sit at a table and eat the same food as his mother without having to pretend to be enjoying it or forcing the food into his mouth. The surprising taste of something delicious breaking apart between his teeth and flowing down his throat blinded Izuku from reality. It had been so long since he tasted something so delicious that it reminded him of his mother's katsudon. But he soon was brought back to reality, and to his immediate horror, he felt something warm around his lips. Apparently, he dodged Katsuki's right hook, and with a swift turn, he bit into Katsuki's forearm with his jaw. There was a pause before Izuku regained his senses, dismissing his tails and the predatory gaze. His eyes returned to the shocked white they normally were. Everyone froze at the sight of blood dripping from Katsuki's arm and the blood that stained Izuku's lips. Katsuki was staring at him in shock before he looked down at the bite mark. The place Deku finally hit him. After 4 years as his rival, the coward finally stopped dodging his punches and hit back. Deku was finally coming at him with everything. Screams filled Izuku's mind, a bloody iron taste filled his mouth, as he stared back blankly at the fallen boy. "Right. Time to get serious, Deku," Katsuki enthusiastically exclaimed, ignoring his wound. This was finally happening. His long-awaited dispute with Deku. This was not a race or a bet to see who could knock a tree the fastest. This was a fight. A definitive way to see who was number one. Tears rushed down Izuku's face as his mouth opened and closed, unable to form words. Until he finally said, "I'm sorry, Kaken." Katsuki stared in shock at what Deku had said to him. He must be mistaken. With those 3 words, Izuku was able to put out the fire that was burning in Katsuki's eyes. "Shitty Deku. Fight me now, you coward. You can't give up after doing that. What kind of idiot are you? Why would Deku say sorry to him after finally hitting him back after years? Did he think he was that weak? That he wouldn't handle a single punch?" Izuku made his way out while Katsuki was distracted in his rant. Katsuki was shouting at him, demanding that he turn back and face him, that they were not done with their fight. Katsuki glared at Izuku's back with a look that would be all too familiar in the coming months. "Coward. Do you really think I'm that weak? Don't go grouping me with these extras. I'll beat you and show you how strong I am. I'll beat you and be number one." But it was too late. Izuku was already gone. Izuku could only blankly stare as the loud cry filled his head. He still felt the blood on him, even after spitting it out from his mouth. What would his mother say when she found out about what happened? Heroes didn't hurt people like that. How could he be a hero? He was unaware of arriving home until Inko knelt before him and placed herself between him and the raging thoughts in his mind. Izuku just blankly stared at where his mother's face was, trembling and turning pale. Izuku, why are you like that? What happened? Am I a monster? He cried, cutting her off. Inko was taken aback by those words. Izuku, what's wrong? What happened? Giving his all, Izuku tried to tell her the events from a little while ago. Kaken. Being mean, another kid, Park. Was all he could muster behind his sobs, but it was enough for Inko to understand. How long had it been since she saw her son getting emotional for another's sake? That brought her back to when Izuku was yet to find out about his quirk, before he grew out of his shell and became the impulsive child he was now. Then, I bit Kaken, he added. There it was. She was not surprised by his actions. To imagine her Izuku just standing still while someone was in distress, that was not who he was. Wringing her hands, she was not sure how to react. On one hand, her son was not a monster, she had to make sure he understood that. But biting others was wrong, and she needed to make sure he wouldn't do that again. She could feel that old feeling coming back, the same fear and anxiety she had forsook all those years ago. She hugged her trembling son, and with her hand, she soothed Izuku with circular motions of her hand on his back. She said it to his ear, "It's all right, Izuku, you're not a monster. You did what you thought was the right thing, and that does not make you a monster." Hearing that his breathing subsided, Inko pulled Izuku away, seeing Izuku's red, crying eyes. Inko felt again those feelings of anxiety she used to have all those years ago. But this time, it was not how she remembered. She was not being dragged down by her thoughts, her chest was not being tightened. She could breathe and think clearly at that moment, and looking back at it, at what she feared could have happened, she came to realize that it was not the end of the world. "Come here," she picked Izuku up onto her arms and carried him to the dining table. There she gently placed him in his seat and headed to the kitchen. With her mind clear, she knew what she had to do. She came back, bringing him a steaming mug and placing it in front of him. Izuku reached with both of his hands towards the mug and brought it to his lips. He took a sip, knowing well what it was. Decaf dark roasted coffee with cream and cinnamon. His favorite. To her shock, Izuku had taken a liking to coffee for the past 2 years. For a kid who had been slowly losing the taste of food, for him to start enjoying coffee was a surprise for both of them. For his safety, Inko decided to give him a decaf. Giving Izuku caffeine was something Inko didn't need to deal with. Inko could notice Izuku relaxing his posture. His eyes started to mellow, his shoulders became less stiff, and his breathing started to calm down. Coffee always made him relax. She wasn't sure, but she suspected it was due to being one of the few things that he could still taste normally, giving him a sense of control over the only aspect of his quirk he could not control. "Feeling better, Izuku?" He gave her a nod. "I think you've had a long day. Why not go to bed now? It's already late, and I am sure you're tired. Why don't we talk about what happened tomorrow when we're both rested?" He nodded again and brushed his runny nose with his arm. He left his seat and slowly made his way to his room. "Oh, Izuku. What happened at that park to make you act like this?" She hoped to get an answer from Mitsuki in the morning. She really wasn't looking forward to that phone call. Thud. Inko jolted from her sleep with the noise. What could this be? At a time like this, surely Izuku would be asleep, and she was sure that Hisashi would only be back during his break next month. Inko got out of bed, afraid. That was not the irrational fear of a mother when her child fell from a swing, no, this was the fear a mother had when she heard a strange noise in her house at 1 a.m. while her husband was away. Giving her all to not scream, Inko slowly made her way to the living room. Taking a peek over the corner, she noticed a light coming from the fridge. Taking a better look at it, she saw what was really happening. It was worse than she could have imagined. She saw her son on the ground, surrounded by half-eaten food and spilled juice. He was curled up, crying. He looked at her from his messy place on the floor. "Mommy, I can't eat it," his fingers curled on the splattered mess of food on the ground. I see, can't taste anything," he sobbed. She could see Izuku on his knees, crying, covered in his vomit, confused about his current situation. Inko was at a loss. For that moment, she forgot everything she learned in the past 4 years about how to be a more supportive mother. All she wanted now was to hug her son and keep him safe from everything else in the world. For him, the food that he ate this morning was no longer fit for his palate. The tender pork chops now tasted dry and sandy in his mouth. The lettuce was like soggy cardboard. Even the milk he had this morning now felt like raw sewage. "Help, Mommy, I can't eat." He looked at her for help. Seeing her little boy asking for help in such a horrible state was what broke her. She didn't think twice before going to hug her baby boy into her arms, giving him the reassurance that he desperately needed. "Is okay, Izuku, everything is going to be fine." Her fingers curled around his arm, pulling him tighter into her embrace. "Mommy is here." She cradled his body onto her arms till he cried himself to sleep. "I wish our reunion could have been in better circumstances," he greeted Inko across his desk. The last time they spoke to each other was when Izuku entered elementary school, 2 years ago. He was the one responsible to file Izuku's quirk registry alongside his physical tests. At the time, he had enough data on Izuku's quirk to predict no unforeseen changes to the kid. Sure, he had lost some of his sense of taste, but that was not uncommon in mutant-type quirks. Who could have predicted that it would develop into a total overhaul of his taste buds? At least it makes cooking easier, no need to worry about seasoning or fancy ingredients. One could just buy those well-balanced meal substitutes that taste like cardboard. Taste buds that even my late wife couldn't drive off. He mentally sighed. At least it makes cooking easier, no need to worry about seasoning or fancy ingredients. One could just buy those well-balanced meal substitutes that taste like cardboard. Taste buds that even my late wife couldn't drive off. For some miracle, coffee was the only thing Izuku could still taste and safely drink. He couldn't feel more sorry for the boy. He followed his growth for 2 years, he knew it wasn't that long, but for the number of tests and observations he made on Izuku, he knew more of the boy than his other patients. All he could think of the news was that it was a shame that such an interesting quirk would create such a terrible drawback. He pitied Izuku for his quirk as it stands. It was a life-changing event that he didn't wish to have. Mrs. Midoriya, he tried to be as clinical as possible about the situation. She straightened herself, getting ready for the news. Hearing him call her by her last name was what tipped her off. She understood that this was an important development for her Izuku. She felt the knot of apprehension grow in her stomach, hoping that it wasn't a bad thing. He started to read from Izuku's medical chart. As I previously stated, Izuku, as a mutant, would suffer a few biological changes so his body would better fit his quirk. The changes observed included the loss of his ability to taste certain foods, which later developed into a complete overhaul of his palate. Which in turn, in his own words, food now tastes disgusting. Her breath was starting to quicken as the memories from last night started to emerge. Sitting on the cold floor, trying to calm down her crying son. She didn't want to relive that nightmare ever again. The pain of her nails pressing her palm jolted her back to the conversation. At the age of 6, at the time of his quirk registry, it was stated that Izuku's quirk consisted of a mutant-type quirk that gave him the following abilities: strength, reflexes, heightened senses, resilient skin, minor regeneration, and the ability to grow an appendage from his back. He closed the file and got ready to tell Inko the bad news. The changes to taste and digestion caused Izuku to develop a highly limited diet. Much like koalas or pandas, your son is only able to eat one thing. Anything else will cause him severe indigestion, possibly triggering an allergic reaction and illness. As for today, Izuku Midoriya's quirk has evolved and developed a dangerous condition. His digestive tract has been altered, and now he can only derive nutrients from human blood. He will now be required to attend quirk counseling sessions so he will learn to better adapt to society while controlling his quirk. He knew what was going to happen next. He turned around to face the back of his office and closed his eyes. For the first time in 3 years, he heard Inko Midoriya cry. How could this be happening to her son? For her little Izuku to have such a fate. She was not ready for this. What would Izuku's life be like after this? How would he eat from now on? Where would he get his blood? His B blood? She asked in her dismay. How will he eat from now on? Due to his unique circumstances, Izuku is eligible for the Detrimental Quirk Support Program. He pulled a booklet from his drawer. Sometimes quirks like Izuku's create obstacles in a person's life that can't be circumvented, and due to that the Hero Public Safety Commission established a program to help those rare cases where quirks are in some way harmful to the individual, or require certain needs that violate current quirk laws. Was that it? Just sign some paperwork, and things would be solved. She couldn't believe it was that easy. If that many quirks were detrimental to people, why hadn't she heard of it before? She didn't like this. Her anxiety was screaming at her about Izuku's situation. She knew how people acted towards heroic quirks, that they were the future of society, their lives were made for them as soon as they turned 4. But it was the opposite for those with villainous quirks. Being feared by others because of what their quirks could do, especially blood-related quirks. She didn't want her Izuku to go through that. They offer many options depending on the needs of the individual, ranging from unique diets to periodical quirk release. Izuku's unique blood diet meets the requirements to apply to this program since he only extracts nutrients from the blood he drinks. He will need to perform a few tests to determine if the type or quality of blood affects him in any way. After that, his quirk registry must be updated to include these new dietary needs. She had to circle back on what he said. Quirk registry must be updated to include blood. No mention of Izuku's aversion to food or the change in his palate. Did he not mention that on purpose? Was this his way to help Izuku hide his condition? She wasn't sure why he didn't mention it, but she would take anything to help her son. I understand, she nodded, taking the booklet as she left. Thank you. She sat waiting while Izuku performed his exams. She was told it would take a few minutes to get the information they needed for his application. She still held the booklet in her hand, now all wrinkled from her firm grip. She had avoided looking at it due to her anxiety, but while she waited, she could take a look at it to better understand what was going to happen to him. What am I thinking? Signing up Izuku for this program. It says they will aid Izuku with the necessities to help him live with his condition. What do they mean by aid Izuku? What can they do that I can't? I work at a hospital, I know about blood donations. She then noticed the page about unique diets and their market prices. 55,000 yen for a blood bag. Inko started to reconsider her feelings about this support program. Let's see. Special diets, no. Rare minerals, no. Dangerous chemicals, no. Yes. Blood diets. So, according to this, they will deliver a weekly blood supply according to the individual specifications. What's this? She noticed a footnote below the DLVRY methods. Depending on the rarity of the item, the delivered quantity might not reach the amount needed. What? Inko screamed internally. Cold sweat started to run down her face when faced with the possibility that Izuku would slowly starve. She then started to calculate how much of her own blood she could extract per week to feed Izuku without impacting her work shifts. I wonder if Mitsuki would offer her blood for Izuku if I asked her nicely while crying for 5 minutes over the phone, as she goes to bed. I hope that Izuku's blood requirements aren't too strict. It would be a shame if I lost Mitsuki's friendship if she refused to do it. They say that nothing stands in the way of a mother and the safety of her child. Alright, Izuku, I know this might be strange at first, but due to your quirk's new development, we will need to check how you are affected. Do you understand? He waited for him to nod. So, for what it seems, you have the ability to drink blood. We are now going to check if the type of blood has any effect on you. The nurse placed a test tube rack with blood samples in front of Izuku. We are going to start from left to right, and you are going to tell us if you feel anything after ingesting it. Izuku was hesitant about taking the AB+ flask from the doctor's hand. Seeing the scarlet liquid in that vial reminded him of what he did to Kaken yesterday. He didn't want to do that ever again. He recalled what the doctor said to his mother. He didn't want to be a monster. He placed the test tube between his lips and let the cold blood enter his mouth. He took the vial and drank in one fell swoop. He could feel it sliding down his throat, sweet, cold, and creamy just like ice cream. Blood was supposed to taste metallic, but it was as savory at that moment as when he bit Kaken. Now he was sure something was wrong with him. Normal people didn't love the taste as he did. How are you feeling, Izuku? Any nauseous feeling or stomach irritation? The doctor asked him, picking up a clipboard. In an instant, Izuku was back from his mental high, and he noticed the empty vial in his hand. He had drunk it all, and he didn't even notice. No. I'm fine, he meekly replied. It tasted good, he added while looking down to avoid the guilt he felt. His hands kept a firm grip on his knees during the rest of the test. Izuku drank vial after vial, and like the first, no side effects were noticed. He couldn't settle on a specific taste for the blood. Each sample had its unique touch, ranging from sour to sweet, crunchy to soft. It was like a mixed buffet in a vial. He has never tasted such a variety of flavors in his life. And after each vial, Izuku's hunger subsided, just like his dream of becoming a hero. The test came to an end after they tried to see if expired blood could be safely consumed by him. Like the other 9 samples, it showed no side effects on him. In the end, the preliminary conclusion was the following: Izuku Midoriya can drink any type of human blood. And like that, the test ended. I want more. Izuku shivered at that thought. Just to think that he would stop the test made his stomach growl. Apparently, the blood vials weren't enough to sate his hunger. He was led by the doctor to where his mother was. When she noticed him arriving, she quickly stood up and made her way towards them. How did it go, doctor? Is Izuku alright? Are there any complications with his diet? And just like that, Inko got back into her worrying mother mode. The doctor hadn't even properly crossed the door when she started showering him with questions. Now, there is nothing unexpected with him, he tried to reassure her. From what we could find, Izuku has no problem ingesting any blood type. Blood also has a different taste for him than it is for us. He wasn't sure how to describe it, but he noticed a lack of metallic taste. Inko relaxed when hearing how Izuku's exam went. She still held the booklet in her hand, which was a reminder of her son's situation. Where does that leave Izuku's food availability? I checked the information, and it said that depending on the type, they might not have enough. Inko's downward spiral was stopped by the doctor's raised hand. During our test, we checked if the freshness of the blood had any effect on Izuku, and from what we found, time doesn't seem to be a factor. That means Izuku is able to consume non-viable blood for transfusions. Availability isn't a concern in his case. That was one worry solved for her. If you follow me, I will schedule Izuku's court counseling sessions and file the paperwork for his application. If everything goes well, Izuku's package will start arriving in the next week. Until then. He picked up a cooler bag for her to pick up. I separated some blood units that were going to be disposed of for Izuku's consumption. We are yet to be sure how much blood Izuku needs, but until his program package arrives with his results, he can feed on these whenever he feels hungry. If this is not enough, contact the clinic, and they will see if more blood can be provided. Thank you, Inko bowed. I can't think what would be of us without your help. The doctor waved it off. I told you that I would observe Izuku's quirk growth for any unforeseen events he could develop. This event is merely one of them. With that, Inko headed home with Izuku. In her mind, her to-do list just keeps increasing, finding space to store Izuku's blood, making sure he drinks his blood, taking him to his first quirk appointment. When did her baby's life become so chaotic? At least he still had his coffee to drink. Maybe she could mix some of the blood with it. She wondered if he would notice the difference. She hoped that the events wouldn't affect Izuku much longer. If he wasn't feeling better by tomorrow, hopefully, the court counselor would be able to help. Izuku was sitting in the lobby waiting for his appointment, swinging his suspended legs, trying to ignore the nostalgic feeling of the room. It has been 2 years since he was last here. He had just joined elementary school, and like the other kids, they all had to go to a lecture and listen about quirk usage in society. They talked about the basics of quirk laws, that you can't use your quirk outside, that heroes use their quirks to catch villains, and that if you harmed others with your quirk, you would be a villain. I am not a villain. I am not a villain. I am not a villain. Izuku was scared. The notebook in his hands was what kept him grounded and prevented him from having another episode like that night. He noticed his hand trembling when he decided to distract himself from his thoughts. Using his hand to firmly hold his notes, he decided to go through his latest analysis notes so he could forget. He remembered that Kaken always pointed out his obsession with his notes, always carrying them around with him, and how he would write in them at the same moment he saw a new quirk in action. At this point, those notes were the only thing that made him feel normal. Izuku opened a page that he knew very well. His page. He noticed the worn-down pages, the ripped edges, and he erased pencil marks. It was like he was 4 again, and he had just been told he had a mutant quirk. He felt the warmth of that moment growing inside of him as he got home and started his own entry in the book. It was the best day of his life. Reading his page always made him feel better, to feel like he was 4 again. Overjoyed. Excited. Normal. But for the last few days, he hasn't been feeling himself. Most people, when faced with a bad memory, would normalize it and ignore it, but Izuku wasn't like most people. He always had to analyze everything, to understand every angle. Be it quirks, heroes, or people, he had to fully understand and categorize everything for them to make sense, especially things about himself. For what we discovered, your quirk mutated your palate and your digestive tract. Due to the events from last week, Izuku had written once more on his quirk page. Your body now requires a significant ingestion of human blood to survive. Quirk, cryptid? Pros, tail growth, strength, resilience, regeneration, heightened senses, agility, and reflexes. Cons, exhaustion after long use, change in the palate. Aversion to food, blood diet. He had a monstrous quirk. Holding his tears made Izuku's eyes burn. Kaken was my friend, my best friend. And I bit him. It wasn't supposed to be like this. He was going to become a hero with Kaken, not hurt others. He would go to UA. He would. Growl. The feral sound of his stomach broke his line of thought. He could feel his incoming hunger from how salivated as if he was skiing a lollipop. He'd never be a hero with a scary quirk like that. UA would never accept him. Bakugo would go to UA. Bakugo would be a hero. Life wasn't fair, and people weren't born equal. Who'd ever heard of a hero that liked the taste of blood? He took the thermos out of his bag and pressed it to his lips. The sweet taste made him feel like finding a comfortable spot and just basking in the flavor as he slowly sipped at it. He was starting to forget why he was so worried about his quirk, why he would be afraid of something that felt so good. His mind was starting to slip from the moment as he held his thermos in his firm grip. What are you drinking there? A voice came from his left side, making him jump in his seat and almost drop his precious thermos. Now he remembered why he was afraid. Izuku quickly closed his bottle and wiped any remaining blood from his mouth. He was sure no one was close to him when he started to drink, so how did he turn to see a girl kneeling on the sofa close to him? How did she get that close to him without him noticing? Was it her quirk? Did he get distracted while drinking? Did his heightened senses fail to notice her when his mind was focused on his meal? You talk funny, she giggled at him. He started to blush and covered his face with his arms, as he realized that he just said all that out loud. I am sorry. Sometimes I lose track of what I'm thinking and it kind of slips out. His face passed the point of red and had reached the color of his earlier drink. As he avoided looking at her, he could hear her giggle turning into a hyena's laugh. You're so cute. At that point, he turned his head and was faced with a predator's gaze. She looked the same age as him and was dressed in a sailor shirt with a bow tie and a dress. She had pale blonde hair that was up in two buns, sharp eyes that never left him, and a smile that reminded him of his own. Izuku started to twist his bottle nervously. The one thing he wished to avoid just happened, and now a girl was talking to him. Sorry, Izuku said without being able to meet her gaze. The girl tilted her head and blinked before scooching closer to him. She gave a closer look at his mouth and squealed in pure delight. Is that blood? She pointed toward the bottle as if it were a fact. All the red from his face drained at the meaning of her words. Oh no. She saw it. Without a chance to escape, Izuku quietly nodded to her question. Yeah. He was done. The worst thing that could have occurred had just happened. She now knew the monster that he was. He knew what she was going to say next, but he wasn't ready to listen to those words. Can I have some of your blood? Well, looks like the saying was true after all. You can never guess what's in a girl's head. In a daze, Izuku extended the arm that held the thermos towards her and let her take it without hesitation. Right in front of him, she took the lid off and gulped down its contents in one go. He could now see that her pupils started to dilate, just like a cat's. They were growing as she drained the thermos. She then finished her drink, exhaling as if she had a refreshing cup of cold water after running a marathon. Why would she want to drink blood? Is it her quirk? Is she like me? Does that mean she needs blood due to her quirk? Is that why she is here? Yes, on all the above, she giggled. Sigh. He did it again. He figured by now that she was fine with him being around. He expected that most people would have already left him or accused him of being a villain after seeing his quirk. Izuku's mouth started to form into a smile. Yeah. I guess you're here because your quirk needs blood to work. Yep. Mama says that I am a demon child, she answered, that cheerful tone never leaving her. Once again, the strange girl surprised him with her words. Why would her parents call her that? Who would call their child a demon? Why's that? He asked, fearing what her answer would be. Mama and Papa got super angry after I showed them, Mr. Birdie. But he was so cute and pretty that I wanted to SCK his blood. So I did. She acted like remembering a fond memory. I want to become the people I like, so I just felt like taking their blood. After that, Mama and Papa asked me why I couldn't be normal like the other girls. So they sent me here. Izuku didn't know what to say. She was just like him. No, she was different. She didn't need to drink blood to survive, she just admired blood. I'm Himiko Toga. What's your name? The girl asked. For the first time, Izuku really looked the girl in the eyes. He could see behind her mask how lonely she was. With that, he quickly replied, Izuku Midoriya. Izuku, 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 she kept repeating his name to herself, checking how it sounded in her voice. You are so cute and smell like blood. I am going to call you Izuken. What? But T Toga, we just met. Her antics just made the red return to his face. Izuku was too stunned to speak and just kept waving his hands without thinking. Instead of giving him an answer, she just kept giggling at Izuku's face before returning his thermos back to him. So, why are you here? The girl asked while skimming through his notes. When did she get his notebook? Izuku racked his brain trying to figure out what he was supposed to say to that. He had to say something. Anything. Anything. I got hungry and bit my friend. The girl glanced at him as if expecting more. He reached to take his notebook from her hands. He opened again at his quirk entry and showed it to her. My quirk changed last week. I am a mutant, and my quirk changed me, so now I can only drink blood. I think I am here so I can learn how to be normal. I just wanted to be a hero, but, now people will think I am a villain, a monster. He managed to hold his tears. He already cried enough this week. Am I a monster? What? Apparently, Himiko would always surprise him whenever she spoke. Am I a monster? She repeated herself. Well, no. My quirk needs blood, too. If your quirk makes you a monster, so I am a villain dash. No. He didn't give her a chance to finish. Your quirk is so much more than that. You can be anyone you want. You make tracking people so easy. You can follow targets without them even noticing you. You can easily be an underground hero, helping track suspects down or on infiltration missions to collect information. He stops to take in a breath of air. He exhaled. You also can eat food. Boop. His mind turned back to Himiko. In the time he was distracted, muttering about how amazing her quirk was, she had gotten a lot closer to him. He could see the light pink in her cheeks from where he was. See. If you say all those amazing things about my quirk, the same goes to you, Izuku. She quickly returned to her seat and averted her eyes as she fidgeted with her fingers. And if you say things like that to me, I will start to want to be you. Too. She softly added. He couldn't hear what she said at the end. Apparently, he took too long trying to understand Himiko's words that a woman at the entrance started calling her over. He assumed it was her mother. She was getting ready to leave, and Izuku couldn't take his eyes off of her. Himiko giggled. Bye, Izuku. Himiko left, but not before hugging him. He was left incapacitated by her display of affection. By the time he came to his senses, it was too late, she was already gone. Looking around, he noticed that she left his notebook open where she was sitting. When he moved to pick it up, he noticed that a new entry had been added to the page. Transform. My quirk lets me be anyone if I drink their blood. A drop gives me about 5 minutes, don't know the quantity for a day yet. People are scared of it, but you said I could be a hero with this, so you can be a hero too, Izuku. You can do it. P.S. Thanks for the blood. Izuku felt his heart warm up at her words. Himiko managed to give him back what he had lost. His hope. He hugged his notebook as if someone would take it away from him at any moment. He was later called to see his counselor. He wondered if they ever met again, they would even recognize each other? Entering that office, he saw what awaited him, a chair, a desk, and a woman with a porcelain smile. She had a cool and reserved expression that Izuku imagined his fingers would freeze if he touched her face. Hello, Izuku, please take a seat, she gestured towards the chair in front of her desk. Izuku swallowed and nodded, taking a seat. The anxiety he felt eased slightly. I am Ryuko Kodachai. I am a certified court counselor and child psychologist, and you and I will be seeing each other for the next few weeks. Let's do our best to get along, she smiled. Hi. He started to feel at ease. I see this is the second time you will have court counseling. You are here she flipped through the folder in front of her, due to your lack of control. Well, actually, you bit someone, Izuku, she interrupted, do you understand what that means? She stared at him, waiting for an answer. He flinched under her gaze before she relaxed, leaning back in her chair. You're 8, and I know your teachers, if not your mother, have told you that biting people is wrong. Sorry. It was an accident, I didn't mean to. He kept his gaze down. For you, it is even more important to know that, since your jaws are strengthened by your quirk, biting people could be called a crime. She held up her hand, cutting off any protest, and smiled. The authorities know it was an accident, and that's why we're here. Okay? He nodded and relaxed back into the chair. It's important for you to learn how to control your urges now, or you could go down a dark path, Izuku. It says you want to be a hero. Is that still correct? Hearing that, Izuku flinched as he nodded in confirmation. You like heroes, right? Can you tell me about heroes that have quirks like yours? There are, Take your time, no need to be shy. The comfort of the familiar topic made him feel at ease. Vlad King is one. There is Hemoglobin and Vampire Lad too. Good, she praised him. Now, what can you tell me about them? Vlad King, he can control his blood outside his body, and he also uses it to capture villains when fighting them. Hemoglobin is a rescue hero that can feed people with her blood to help them heal faster. Vampire Lad, well, if he bites someone, they will follow his commands for a while, he finished, looking at her, expecting her next words. Excellent, and how is your quirk different from theirs? He brightened up at her question. Someone asked him about his quirk, she wanted him to explain his quirk. He could explain his quirk to her. He was so distracted by her request that he couldn't see where the conversation was leading him. My quirk lets me use energy in my body to grow 2 tails from my back. It also makes me very strong and fast. And I can heal, and my body is difficult to hurt. I also have a very good nose. Izuku hoped that his answer was satisfactory to her. Let's shift gears now. What happens when you get hungry? Well, I need to consume some nutrients so that I want you to be honest with me, Izuku, she stopped his excuse of an explanation. Honesty is an important virtue. He saw what she wanted from him. He couldn't do it. He couldn't admit that to her. I am waiting, Izuku. He had to do it, he needed to tell her. I bite people. He felt betrayed by saying that as if it wasn't real till he admitted it to himself. Yes, you attack others when you feel hungry, she let it sink in for a moment. Be honest now, do you think that being a hero is the safest option for you? Can you be 100% sure that you can control your quirk at all times? A small boy slipping up like this is tragic. Even when you are an adult, I'm sure people would understand, but a hero hurting those they are trying to save. Her voice faded off. Tragic. Izuku nodded, mumbling a slight agreement as the itching anxiety eased, leaving a gnawing, unsatisfying void. There is nothing wrong with dreaming, but why don't we talk about what other options you could think about as well? She handed him a worksheet. This is a personality test. Please be honest. I think it will be a good starting point for figuring out other options for you. He took the sheet and leaned over the desk, mechanically filling in the bubbles. Apathy. The absence of drive or care. If he couldn't be a hero, what was the point? It had been 6 weeks since that whole display at the park. Since Deku ran crying after biting him in the arm. And on top of that, Katsuki was sad at how Deku treated him. He was not weak. The little coward was missing for days after the incident. When he went to check what the heck was going on with the nerd, Auntie had told him that something was happening with Deku's quirk, and she was sorry that he would be busy with exams and quirk counseling for the rest of the summer. He had been sad at the nerd for running away, and now Auntie was saying that Deku would be too busy until the end of the summer to meet him. He couldn't get angry at Auntie. She was nice to him, unlike the hag, so he let that go. But classes were starting again, and Katsuki's patience could only last so far. By the end of the first week, he was done waiting. After hearing the bell announcing the end of class, Katsuki dashed directly towards Izuku's seat. The seat was empty. He had already left. Deku! He screamed. Deku had been acting strange since he returned to school. He started distancing himself from others and refused to do much of anything when asked. He had gotten paler, kept looking at his feet, and always seemed on the verge of being sick. He would leave as soon as the bell rang to avoid Katsuki's questions. The strangest thing was that he hadn't used his quirk the entire week. All of that didn't sit right with Katsuki, and he would get to the bottom of it on that day. Chasing down Izuku wasn't a problem. He knew the path to the Midoriya house like the back of his hand, so intercepting Izuku on his way home was second nature to him. Getting the jump on Izuku had been easier than he expected. It would have taken a while to catch up with Izuku, but he managed to get to him in under 5 minutes. He had been so focused on catching Izuku that he didn't notice the borderline marathon he performed, the several kids he pushed aside, and the overpass he jumped over to land in front of Izuku. Deku! He screamed. Kaken, what are you doing dash? Shut up, nerd! He interrupted. I am tired of you acting all high and mighty just because you got a hit on me. What? Yeah. Don't pretend I haven't noticed that since that day in the park, you have been acting off. You have been avoiding me and the extras, and you haven't used your quirk once. Izuku flinched at that accusation. Kaken, that isn't dash. He got cut off again. Don't come with excuses, Deku. Just because you managed to hit me, doesn't mean you can look down on me. I want a rematch. Rematch? He was disoriented. Yes, a rematch. And this time, you'd better use your quirk. You think you can be a hero without using your full power? I don't want to be a hero anymore. Katsuki had to pause for a moment to make sure that he wasn't listening to things. What did you say? Each word was said with a strong and dominant pause. I don't want to be a hero anymore. He struggled to talk under the pressure Katsuki emanated. Why the hell would you say that? Katsuki threw his hand into the air. My quirk isn't fit for a hero. What are you saying? After me, you have the next best quirk for being a hero. No. Katsuki had become so used to Izuku's passiveness from the last few days that he was surprised at the energy and assurance that Izuku placed in that reply. Kaken, my quirk changed. He fidgeted with the end of his shirt. He could do it, he had to say it, just like in that office. Say it. When I use my quirk, it makes me want to attack others. It makes me drink blood. I'm a monster, not a hero. Katsuki's rage went silent as his mind tried to process what he had just listened to. The logic in his head was overpowered by anger and confusion. Not grasping any meaning of what had been said to him, he uttered. The F, are you saying, Deku? My quirk makes me hungry for blood, Kaken. People would understand if I lost control now, but a hero hurting those they are trying to save. It would be tragic. I am better off not using my quirk in the end. He said in resignation. In a combination of silent rage, a lack of understanding, and a lack of wanting to understand, Katsuki tried to piece together the scraps of information he got and make sense of the situation. His fists balled, and his face scrunched up into a snarl. The culmination of his thought process moved rapidly, starting with, quirks don't just do that, then to you must be hiding something, to you can't even trust me, and finally to you're looking down on me. He bared his teeth at Izuku menacingly. You say you are a monster, Deku? Just because you can't control your impulses, you think you are what? A zombie? A demon? As if. You are just a coward trying to make excuses and running away. You are not a monster, you are just a ghoul. Katsuki pushed Izuku down and left him there. He stopped before turning one last time. If you will keep this selfish self-pity of yours, then do it. But don't even think of talking to me ever again. Until you decide to take things seriously, stay out of my sight. That was the last time they talked together. Another day full of excitement. That wasn't something Izuku was fond of. The physical assessment day was something he was expecting to do when entering middle school. What he didn't predict was the intensity of the exercises. He did not expect to run out of blood halfway through them. The strain of the events kept piling over and over on Izuku's body. After each event, he would feel the hunger growing once again, like he was fasting for days. That, combined with his lack of blood, made it really something. Izuku wouldn't say he was an aggressive person. But the combination of his hunger and today's unexpected exercises definitely made him want to avoid people. And the hunger wouldn't go away. So, in other words, he was in a hurry. His stomach growled with an urgency to fill it with something warm. He tried to bite down on his hand, lips, and even tried to swallow some candy he got at school. Anything to help him forget his aching need. However, each time he tried to concentrate on doing so, his urge kept popping back into his mind. The smell of people around him. The sound of the heartbeats from other students. His lack of blood for the day. The desire to use his quirk, he had to ignore. All of that just piled up on top of his hunger. A tingle ran down Izuku's spine every time he passed by someone. They were so full of blood that Izuku could feel the taste, even from a distance. It made him remember the way the other students stood in line for the blood test. All that blood being extracted made him wish he had the chance to feel his teeth against their flesh. To break the skin. To slosh in blood. To feel a warmth like no other. The very thought of it all just... Jaya. Izuku puked. One of his hands was up against the brick wall to hold him steady while the other pressed against his stomach to push out the contents he refused to digest. He panted heavily with his head down, but no matter if he slowed or quickened his breathing, the taste would not go away. Only with this, he could banish the thoughts of his urge from his mind. And no matter what, his hunger wouldn't leave. Izuku remembered how others looked at him when Izuku had his first episode. During that time, he was still trying to go by without drinking blood, but he lost control and drank the whole thermos in seconds while in class. This was not something that could be satiated by normal means. Izuku couldn't go home like this. Even if he tried, there would be a chance he wouldn't control himself while in a crowd. He knew what he had to do. He didn't care if it was from a vending machine. If he found coffee, he could make it home safe. All that he cared about was finding a vending machine. A few rays of beautiful orange light shone through the buildings as Izuku weaved down the alleys looking for his coffee. Until he had his coffee, no one was safe. He gnawed on his finger to buy time. The alley was dark. Only the light from above was able to penetrate deep into the cluttered and isolated walls. Sounds were faint and distant alike. Izuku could faintly hear the noise coming from the main street. In his mind, avoiding other people was the best choice. If no one was around him, no one could be hurt. He was rushing through the alleys looking for a still operating vending machine with coffee in stock. He just needed one can. One single drink to delay his hunger for a few hours. Izuku could hear the noise from his belly over the frenetic sound that was his breathing. He bit down again on his hand to buy time. This time, he broke the skin. The funny thing about himself was that his own blood wasn't able to sate his hunger. I guess it must be like how a person can't asphyxiate themselves by holding their breath. For once, his muttering helped him distract his mind as he ran through the alleyways. Anything to buy him time. The scream came after Izuku ran past the opening. It was just a side glance, but he could see it, a middle school girl being attacked. What should I do? What should I do? Izuku's mind was in conflict. He just witnessed someone in danger, but he wasn't a hero, and he was running out of time. Hang in there? I'm sorry. I am out of time, I'm sorry. A hero will come to save you soon. A hero is bound to come here. Izuku then realized where he was, in the middle of a maze of alleyways, far away from the main street. The next moment, Izuku realized he was running back to that opening and getting ready to tackle the aggressor despite what his mind was telling him. There's no hope. It's my fault. I'm sorry, Kaken. No try, no harm. My dream. It would be tragic. Being a hero. You need to be realistic. With a quirk like that, you will just hurt others. With a thud and a yelp, Izuku could feel the aggressor under his hold. He turned to the girl standing by the wall, and with his last cry, he said, "Run now." For the brief moment their eyes met, Izuku could only make up her long, pale blonde hair from behind the wall of pain his mind was in. The slight pain in his temple managed to keep the last bit of his sanity in check. He knew it. He was on the brink of losing it. "You little sheet. What do you think you are doing?" The man yelled below Izuku as he stood up, throwing the kid to the side. Izuku was on the ground, trying not to let his hold on his last sanity slip. He didn't have the strength to open his eyes or to stand up. But he could hear the man approaching his curled-up body. "Do you have any idea of what you just did?" He emphasized each word with a kick to Izuku's stomach. Drool slipped past his open lips and down his chin, just like his sanity, and it dripped onto the cold ground. That cold was nice on his skin, it kept his mind occupied as the urge drew near. It was sheer luck that such a meal had decided to come to him in his time of need. Right to him who hungrily imagined devouring the man's corpse. Please, run. You little dash." Something pulling on the man's ankles interrupted his assault on Izuku. He didn't hear anyone approaching him from behind, but the force of that pull had him fall on his face. It took him a few seconds to get out of his shock, but when he turned his head over, he saw the brat had stood up again. He tried to get up, but he couldn't take his legs apart. When he looked down, he saw something like red snakes curling up on his feet. He screamed and tried to kick, but they didn't budge. All he could feel was that the snakes were tightening their hold on him. He could see that the brat had moved close to his reach. He got a punch ready to hit him, but after making contact with the kid, he didn't budge an inch. The hell? He looked up, and it was when he saw it. The snakes were coming from the boy's back. Were they tails? And what the F was up with the kid's eyes? He looked at the black emptiness of the void, and at its center, he could see a red blood pit. It was then that he realized that what stood in front of him wasn't a kid. That was a monster. A monster dash. He couldn't finish his sentence as his body was flung towards the wall behind him. Crack. He could feel a sharp pain where the monster had a hold of his leg. He didn't have time to check if his leg was broken since he felt being pulled again. This time back to the floor where he was a few moments earlier. After the pain settled in, he could see the appendages curling up his body. He couldn't move his arms to stop it, even if they were free. He couldn't pass the pain he felt all over his body. Soon, he saw the monster kid approaching, crouching right above his face. He saw the drool on his mouth and the look on his face. It was the look one gives to the food they are about to eat. He knew from the first attack he was going to die, but only now he realized how he was going to die. He was going to be eaten by that monster. Once that moment came, it required everything in his power to keep himself still. Don't act harsh and scare him away, let him feel in charge for a moment, feel that I am prey. All things good come to those who wait. He could hear the pattern now. The pattern was a heartbeat. It was fast but had a noticeable tone to it. Anxiety, panic, fear, anger. He had learned to distinguish those emotions by listening to his own heartbeat. Those were familiar feelings to him. He cautiously let his tails grow and slither over behind the man while he was distracted. It was easy to get a hold of him. He quickly gave it a tug and his target came falling like a tree. He wouldn't put up much of a fight from now on. Good. Izuku looked at his downed prey, squirming to get out of his grasp. It would be so easy to get him now. But he had to wait. He waited for hours so he could wait for a few more seconds. It was time to tenderize the meat. Izuku liked his lips. About time. After a few quick tosses around, the man stopped moving. Time to eat. Izuku crouched down, and in one quick motion, he grabbed the man by his throat to prevent him from screaming and pulled him up. The more he watched it, the more he watched his prey squirm. In his clutches, the more Izuku lost his sanity and reason. He felt something warm in his mouth when he got his senses back. He was no longer curled up on the ground and his hunger had disappeared. His mind was finally clear. Then the realization came to him. There was blood in his mouth. The blood was warm, not like the stale taste that came when his mom heated up his packages. This was fresh. And there was something else. His stomach was full. Izuku pulled his hands back. They were covered in red. There was a man on the ground. Spots from him were missing and he wasn't moving. The body wasn't moving. Oh, gods, what had he done? No, 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 no. I attacked a person, I attacked a person, I attacked a person. He is dead, he is dead, he is dead, he is dead, he is dead. I'm a villain, I'm a villain, I'm a villain, I'm a villain. Izuku was living his biggest fear. He had not just lost control, he attacked and killed. That was his greatest fear, and now his greatest failure. Bakugo was right. He was weak. He had lost control. Beyond the numbness of his mind, Izuku could feel something pulling his arm. He didn't offer much resistance to that, everything was numb for him at the moment. So he just let himself be pulled by an unknown source. He wasn't sure where he had been dragged. In his shocked state, Izuku wasn't really paying much attention to his surroundings. From the brief moments his mind allowed him to focus, he noticed that he had stopped moving and was now sitting at a bench by the edge of a park. His dull eyes noticed movement coming from his left. He made his best to use the will he had left to slowly turn his neck towards the mysterious stranger. It was the girl from before. Didn't she run away? Now that he was still, he could now pay whatever attention he could muster at her. He could see her panting with her hands on her knees. Apparently, they had been running to get here. She was mostly the same age as he by the cream cardigan she wore over her school uniform. Why is she helping me? I'm a monster dash. Thank you. Her words managed to get his attention. Why is she thanking me? Didn't she see what I did to that man? I'm a monster. You really saved me back there. I'm not sure what I would have done if you hadn't tackled him down. She turned to look at him and was surprised at what she saw. Izuku was hunched in his seat, his glassy eyes kept staring at nothing. It was like looking at a corpse. But she noticed a little light of life on them after she thanked him. He is listening. You might be wondering what all that was in the alley. Well, I kind of went over my head. Teehee, she bonked her head and pulled her tongue out in a silly me gesture as if it explained everything. A few weeks ago, one of my friends mentioned that she was being stalked by some strange man. That kind of made her scared, and it was really hard to see her like that. So I decided to find her stalker and confront him, she said with such a natural tone that one could think that she was talking about the weather. A long time ago, this one boy I met told me that I had an amazing quirk, that I could easily track people without them noticing me. So I did just that. She gazed into the horizon, remembering what could be assumed to be a fond memory. Well, I found him and managed to corner him in that alley, but he did not take well to a middle school girl threatening him. So it was when you appeared. You just jumped in and got him on the ground. That was so amazing. She was euphorically retelling Izuku about her rescue. And after you were thrown to the side and beaten up, you stood up there all bloody. It was so cool. Then you just knocked the guy around, and made him bloody too. She got lost in her rambling. Oh, sorry about that, she scratched her head in embarrassment. I get lost when the topic is blood. Kinda due to my quirk. It kinda scares others, but I can be much more than just my quirk. A good boy once told me that. He barely knew me and he still believed I had a good quirk, so it means that I can do good. That I will be good. That is why I decided to help my friend. She pumped her hand in a fist into the air showing her conviction. She stood up from her seat next to him. So don't worry about what you did. You saved my life and that is what matters. She leaned towards the unresponsive Izuku and placed a peck on his forehead before leaving. Everything was passing by him at that point, but he wasn't aware enough to notice it. It was kinda like being in a dream. A never-ending nightmare of his actions. Blood, screams, hunger. It all kept going in a loop in Izuku's mind. It was static, a constant buzz in his mind. But like any old TV, it needs to be turned off. And everything was clear and silent again. The moment he started recalling what happened, he bolted back looking for the alley he was in. He needed to check on the man he attacked, he needed to call for help, and he needed to atone for his actions. He managed to trace back his step by following the faint scent of blood he could pick, but when arriving where he assumed was the scene of his crime, there was no one there. No body, no police, no heroes. He stood there trying to understand what he wasn't seeing. Where was the man he had killed? Did someone else find it and call the police? If so, where were they? Where were the heroes to capture him? Was that man still alive? Was he going to be reported? Were the heroes going after him? What would he tell his mom when they showed up at their doorstep to arrest him? He wasn't a villain, he wasn't a monster. He wasn't a villain, he wasn't a monster. He was a villain, he was a monster. He was a monster. A monster. A monster dash. Stop. So don't worry about what you did. You saved my life, and that is what matters. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. He kept saying that to ground himself to the present, to keep himself from spiraling out of control. He needed to be in control, especially now. Analyze what happened here. Think Izuku, think. I was running out of time when I saw a stranger attacking a girl. I tackled him so she could escape. He then decided to attack me back. The girl came back and took me away to a park. After she left I came back here and the man was gone. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. A villain blocked the way home. That is why I was late. Mom will not need to worry. That happens. With his mind made up, Izuku set off to his home. Himiko had arrived safely at the Toga residence. She told her parents that she had a run-in with an old friend and she had lost track of time catching up with them, something totally normal for a girl to do. Normal. That is what she had been for the past 4 years, a normal schoolgirl that liked cute things, boys, and hanging out with her friends. Normal was the mask she had been wearing in front of others. only taking off her mask in the safety of her room. The only place she could be herself. Well, except in front of him. He was the one exception. She let her weight drop into the comfort of her bed. Her body turning left and right, trying to find a comfortable position, as she looked up into her ceiling, her mind being filled by her surfacing thoughts. It hurts, doesn't it? She asked the boy that no longer was there. Pretending to be fine. Keeping yourself locked up all the time. She said casually as someone would talk about their dreams for the future. You haven't changed a bit, she giggled while remembering an old fond memory. The same memory that kept her going for all these years. I am going to free you from this society soon. My Izuku. Izuku Midoriya woke up feeling rather refreshed. That, in of itself, was strange, considering how his life had been shaped in the last 6 years. Come on Izuku, this is just another year. You know the routine already. Sure, the first 4 years haven't set a great track record, but you've gotten better in the 2 years since that relapse. School just started and besides, Kaken is in my class again. Even if he does ignore me. Izuku, are you up? Izuku could hear his mother call. I thought I heard you muttering. His jaw immediately clamped shut. I did it again. Tripping on his blankets, and falling out of bed, Izuku quickly made his way to the kitchen where his mom had already set the table for breakfast. Well, he didn't need the table set to him, but it was nice to have something close to a normal routine. There you are, dear. I was worried that you would be late when you didn't show up after your alarm rang. His mother smiled, and Izuku felt the tiniest bit better about being there. It's all right Mom, I just got lost in my thoughts. He slipped into his usual seat. The only reason I usually leave so early is so I can avoid getting caught in a crowd if there happens to be a hero fight on the way to school, Izuku responded as he started heartily slurping his blood bag and coffee. He got used to this routine by now. It took him a week to bring himself to drink blood. It took another 6 months for him to stop feeling bad about it, and another 5 months for him to view his situation as his new normal. As for Inko, all she needed was to see her son half-starved for her to begin nagging him about his blood intake. Of course, dear. Make sure you drink up and get your energy for the day. I have a feeling that today will go well. Maybe things at school will pick up for you. This time it was Izuku's turn to stiffen. Under his mother's earnest gaze he managed to stammer, why yeah, I'm sure things at Aldera will be fine, considering that it'll be time to move on to high school soon. At least I've got the end of the week to look forward to. The thought sprung up unbidden as Izuku went about his morning routine. Making sure to grab his blood thermos from the fridge and his latest notebook off his desk, he made his way out of the apartment. Have a good day, Mom. I'll see you soon. You too, Izuku. Be safe. Damn it. Izuku wasn't one for cursing but, after the encounter he had on his way to school, no one would have blamed him. His usual route had been blocked due to a villain fight. MT Lady, a new hero that had just debuted, stole the spotlight from Kamui Woods and caused excessive collateral damage with her gigantification quirk. Now Izuku had to take a different route to class due to the debris left by the new hero. After the morning he had, no one would fault him for some minor foul language. Izuku was angrier by the fact that he had gotten distracted by the hero fight than by his path being blocked. He didn't mean to watch for that long. He didn't even want to, but his quirk had other ideas. Pulling himself out of his thoughts, he took out his phone and checked his eyes. For the first time in months, they had transformed without him wanting to. Quickly inhaling and exhaling, Izuku tried to get himself to calm down. High emotions were a problem if he wanted to keep his eye in check. Guess that's what I get for getting myself distracted. He was familiar with his surroundings from his hero watching excursions to know where to go. It just meant that he needed to take a detour around Tatooine Station to get back to his usual route. Wanting to get away soon as possible from the gathering crowd, Izuku went back on his journey to Aldera. And with that, he started to get away from the crowd. Walking alongside the now empty street, he really looked just like another regular teenage boy. Despite his blackened eyes. Then again, a large part of the population had mutation quirks that made them stand out from the rest, so Izuku really did look normal. Even so, Izuku continued to walk in a hurry. Making another turn left, Izuku entered the approaching underpass. On the very first step of going in, Izuku took a moment to take a breather. Phew. I need to calm down. It hasn't been 30 minutes since I had breakfast and my quirk is already flaring up. I need to calm down, all this stress is going to be the end of me. Lucky that I still have some time till class starts. Izuku said his thoughts out loud as he calmed himself from his sporadic flare of emotions. Checking his eye once more, he noticed that his black scara had receded. Deciding to take this chance, he continued forward. Taking what was supposed to be his step out of the tunnel, Izuku noticed that he couldn't do it. While recovering from what could be considered a breakdown, Izuku's mind was still distracted from putting down his emotions. Izuku didn't notice the putrid smell approaching him from behind. Izuku looked down to see what had stopped him from moving when he noticed the thick dark green liquid that was wrapped around the bottom of his feet. After the grueling discovery, Izuku noticed that the sludge was actually moving up his legs. In a panic, Izuku started to kick his leg in different directions to try and find leverage, but no matter what he tried, his leg couldn't shift an inch as the slime coated his knees. He found that he was really stuck. Turning around, Izuku tried to find where that thing was coming from. It was then that he saw it. From the sewage lid a few meters behind him, the sludge was pouring out through the small holes. Damn it! Get off me! This time, he tried twisting and jumping away, but to no avail. I don't think I will. A chill ran down Izuku's spine when a gargled voice responded to his demand. With wide eyes peering menacingly down at him, Izuku saw the face of his assailant. Better yet, the lack of one. Villain! It was all he could cry out before it was too late. Don't worry. I'm just hijacking your body. Calm down. It'll only hurt for about 45 seconds. Then it'll be all over, the cruel voice announced, as the viscous sludge that made up his body started to enter Izuku's mouth. Too tight. Can't breathe. Please stop. In what was supposed to be Izuku's last moments, he suddenly felt free from the villain. Opening his eyes, Izuku found himself looking down at the villain. Confused, Izuku glanced around, finding himself to be hanging off of the tunnel overhead, his two tendrils extended out of his back, gripping the pipes which run above the underpass. In the back of his head, only one thing came to mind. He calmly noted how his shirt now had 2 holes ripped through it. Come down here like a good meat suit. The villain called him out, as he reached up, desperately trying to retrieve Izuku. Izuku curled onto himself, trying to create as much distance between him and the villain. All his means of escape were no longer an option as he found himself without the means to effectively dodge the villain below him. The criminal was much bigger than Izuku initially imagined, but was still not capable of reaching Izuku, who was dangling from the ceiling. Before Izuku could react, a tendril shot out from the mass of sludge in an attempt to reach out to him. Even with years of neglect, Izuku managed to move his tail just enough to avoid the attack. How many years had it been since the last time he used his quirk to move in the air like that? How long had he ignored his training in fear of what had happened to him? He was lucky that his appendages were an extension of his body. Using them again was just like riding a bike after many years. After a few falls, you would get right back at it. But in Izuku's case, falling meant certain death. He could hear the villain shout at him in irritation. Apparently, he was running out of time, before he tried to shoot another limb at Izuku. This time Izuku was able to use his tail to swing himself to the right. All the muscle memory was coming back to him. It would have been enough to keep him safe if not for the fact that he was running out of stamina. Much to his surprise, a third tendril was waiting for him on his way back from his swing. It just made enough contact with his foot to get a hold of him. Now Izuku found himself in a tug-of-war, with himself as the rope. Ignoring the stress pain on his quirk, Izuku attempted to pull himself back up. He didn't move an inch from his position. This time the criminal was aware of Izuku's escape trick and made sure to hold him tight. I would love to play tag with you for a little bit longer, but I'm in quite a hurry. So, why don't you just do me a favor and come on down? Ha! Just as he finished talking, Izuku felt the pipe rumble slightly above him. Curse you, brat. I've already wasted enough time. Boom. From his high ground, Izuku was able to see the sewage lid fall to the ground. The shock that it caused on the pipes in the ceiling could still be felt. But what caught his attention was the figure that emerged from the sewer this time. Fear not, kid. For you are safe now. I am here. Before Izuku's very eyes, All Might exited out from the manhole. The #1 hero and symbol of peace stood proud and strong on the other side of the underpass. Almost immediately, a limb of sludge shot over at the hero. Unlike Izuku, All Might met the tendril with his own fist. Texas. Smaz. Before the villain could react, All Might's attack blasted him from the spot and out the underpass. As if standing in the middle of a storm, magnificent winds rushed down the enclosed space and towards both ends of the tunnel. Izuku felt the blast hit him. Thankfully, due to his place high up, most of the blast went below him, but that didn't mean he didn't feel the strong winds hit him as his hold on the pipes was nearly released. Izuku quickly covered his head with his arms to protect his eyes. Amid the gust, Izuku could hear the noise of sludge spreading, hitting the walls all around him and being blasted out of the tunnel, ending the villain's hold on him. The wind died down. Along with it came the defeat of the sludge villain. Izuku slowly opened his eyes to look around him. Indeed, the villain was gone and standing below him was All Might. Even though he was dangling from the ceiling and that just a minute ago he was almost killed, it was an amazing sight to see. Hello up there. The voice that originated from below called out with worry. Looking down, Izuku trailed his head up until he saw the face of the number one hero standing right in front of him. All Might was tall. Apologies for getting you caught up in my villain hunt. Mistakes like that aren't my style. Who would expect that the sewage system would be hard to navigate? In an instant, Izuku's quirk deactivated, making him fall to the ground. He dusted himself as he got back up. Oh no, All Might. I'm fine. You don't have to apologize or anything. The much smaller boy said while waving his arms around. He may have given up on the pursuit of his dream of becoming a hero all those years ago, but being in the presence of All Might made him feel something that he had long forgotten. It was clear why he was the number one hero. All Might gave a glance over Izuku's condition before giving him a strange look at the state of his uniform. That doesn't look fine, young man. At the hero's words, Izuku looked at the state of his uniform shirt. It had 2 holes on it, leaving his back exposed for the world to see. As soon as he realized that, he tried to cover his back with his jacket that had been blown away by the wind. Oh. That's just from my quirk. I am not hurt. I swear. After managing to give All Might an excuse, Izuku started to calm himself, although he was still slightly nervous by being in the presence of the number one hero. If you are sure. Now I must take my leave, young man, and return to my chase. Thank you for your support. All Might replied as he walked towards the exit. All Might, wait. Izuku wasn't sure. What made him call out to the hero? The encounter was already over, Izuku was safe and he did manage to keep his stamina within his limit for the day. So why prolong this encounter? But an old question surfaced in his head. Something that he thought to have buried all those years ago. He now could ask it to All Might. He had to know the answer. You can catch me again on TV. It was now or never. Even with a time limit, can someone still be a hero? He cried. That made All Might stop his jump. All Might felt the twinge of his injury, the shadow of the past leaving a permanent scar, and a reminder of his own limits. Grimacing to himself, he knew all too well what a time limit meant. Trying to be a hero in the state you are in will only cause more pain to everyone. You'll never be the same ever again, not with your injuries. You need to retire for the sake of the peace you fight for. All Might stood from his crouching position and made his way back towards the boy. Taking a knee in front of Izuku, he looked to the now leveled green eyes. I can't say that I know about your situation, young man. But just know that a hero might face many hardships, but as long as their heart doesn't waver and they don't let others stop them from saving people. He placed his hands on Izuku's shoulder, giving him a genuine smile. Yes. As long as you use the time you have to save others, you are a hero. A time limit can't stop you if you don't allow it. As he said those last sentences, All Might gave a confident thumbs up. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. All Might said that he could be a hero. He could be a hero. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Izuku started to cry tears of gratitude. That means a lot. No need, young man. All part of being a hero. With that last part, All Might shouted as he rocketed off the ground and into the sky. With that, All Might was gone. Right. Well, thanks for saving me. Izuku said to the now empty space where All Might was. Izuku gave a wave as he watched the hero go. His eyes followed the blur of the man getting smaller and smaller before disappearing on the horizon. It was a sight to see. And an experience he'll forever remember. The thought of getting an autograph never crossed his mind during the interaction, only after he remembered that he had his notebook with him. But the conversation that he had with the man instead was way worth it to Izuku. Enough to reignite the dead flame that was inside of him. Honestly, that was the first time in a while that he felt any kind of real joy. As he exited the underpass, a smile could be seen to form on his face as the sclera of his eyes started to turn black. Small veins started to emerge around his eyes as he cried in relief. Really? Thank you, All Might. If you hadn't saved me, I don't think I would have been able to control myself. Now that you are all third years now, it's time to think about your futures. The teacher declared imperiously. Now, I know it's time to check your career applications, but I know that you all plan to go for heroics anyway. The class riveted onto his every word. All of them were showing their quirks off. Well, most of them were. Yes, I know you all have wonderful quirks. But you know that is against the rules to use them while in class. He gave a half attempt to control his students. He proceeded to check the high school application forms on his desk as his class kept the chattering at a lower volume. All except Katsuki Bakugo. Ah. Don't compare me with these half-butted losers, he shouted from his seat, as if I could be compared to them. They don't even have half the effort needed to get into the top 500. He added. By the way, Midoriya. You forgot to write your first choice in your form. The teacher called Izuku, eyes above the stack of pages on his desk. Izuku gritted his teeth, looking up at the waiting expression on the teacher's face. It was no secret that Izuku had never shown much interest in pursuing any career. He would mostly keep to himself and would normally never stand out from a crowd. If it wasn't for his eyes turning red after PE classes, people would believe that he was in fact quirkless. And therefore, Izuku was having trouble speaking up to him. He was undecided if he should or not hide the look of embarrassment on his face. Soon his time was up and he had to give the man his answer. Yes, I am thinking about it. I think I might try to apply for UA. He said, trying to hide his face from the sudden silence that came from the rest of the class. No freaking way. UA? Does Midoriya even have a quirk? I heard this year's cutoff mark is 79%. The rest of the class muttered, briefly glaring at him with a considerable measure of surprise. All except Katsuki. What? That is what he said when hearing Izuku's words. He turned his face towards the back of the classroom and glared at the boy. He stayed in silence glaring at Izuku as the teacher finally decided to take control of the class. His eyes didn't show hatred towards the boy, but Izuku could see the clear message in them. As the class ended, Katsuki made his way towards Izuku's desk. What do you mean, you want to go to UA? Those were the first words Katsuki addressed to Izuku in 6 years. Normally Izuku would be celebrating that his longtime friend decided to interact with him after such a long time. But he would take a Katsuki ignoring him any time, rather than a Katsuki angry at him. Izuku didn't know what else to expect after his words at the start of class. I think I might try to apply for UA. Applying for UA? What was he even thinking? Did that pep talk with All Might really erase years filled with fear of what could go wrong if he lost control of his quirk? Katsuki was still approaching and Izuku was running out of time. In his panic, he looked around the classroom in hopes that he wasn't Katsuki's real target. He was out of luck. They were the only ones that haven't left for the day. Hi, Kakakin. I just thought Izuku tried to reply before being silenced by Katsuki's aura. I told you before to stay out of my way until you decided to take things seriously. He shouted, pointing at the boy. So unless you magically grew a spine since yesterday, I am the only one that is going to UA. It's just. There's no harm in trying. Izuku meekly replied. No harm in trying. You think you can pass the entrance exam with that shitty motivation? Katsuki jabbed a pinger at Izuku's chest. How do you plan on passing the practical exams if you can't even give a DMN about using your quirk? You'll just be taking the spot of someone that has a real chance of getting in. Katsuki threw an explosive slam on Izuku's table before leaving. This is my last warning, Deku. If you keep that self-pity act and don't start giving your all, you are better off dead than being a hero. With those words, Katsuki left Izuku alone in the classroom. On his way home, Izuku found himself deep in his thoughts. Maybe Kakin is right? As long as I am afraid of using my quirk, I might as well give up. I couldn't offer any help if I reach my daily limit. And if I went beyond it, it would be tragic. A time limit can't stop you if you don't allow it. Why those words kept coming back to his mind. Did he really try to be a hero? Would he really try to use his quirk past his time limit? Would that really be feasible? He hadn't used his quirk that much lately, which was something that he got used to. Besides today's events, Izuku would never invoke his appendages for anything. It was already hard to keep his regeneration from activating, and controlling his strength and speed was nigh impossible. It was just easy to avoid any situation that would make him use his stamina. During his tangent, Izuku found himself unintentionally walking towards a crowd of people. From the way of how things seemed, it was a hero fight. He would normally avoid those if he could, but apparently, All Might's words made an old habit of his resurface. From what he could see, Backdraft was trying to create a perimeter between the villain and the civilians. MT Lady was having problems entering the small street. Death Arm saying something about being unable to grab the sludge? Was that the villain's quirk? Also, he could see Kamui Woods evacuating some civilians from what he could guess were explosions? Izuku made his way through the crowd, so he could be able to clearly see what was happening. There, in the middle of the street was the same sludge that attacked him that morning. Didn't All Might take care of him? Taking a closer look at the explosions, Izuku recognizes the red eyes trapped inside the green sludge. Kakin. What was he doing there? Why was Katsuki a hostage? Why weren't the heroes doing anything? Before anyone could react, Izuku rushed forward, clearly not thinking about anything but saving Katsuki. As Izuku rushed up, he stopped a few meters in front of the creature, getting its attention. He clearly had no idea what he was doing. In his mind, All Might's words echoed. A time limit can't stop you if you don't allow it. Izuku took his thermos flask off his jacket pocket. Uncapping the lid, he took a big swing out of it. Moments later, a warm feeling started to emerge from his back. An old sensation that he was so used to feeling. That warmth started to rush outwards, turning into tendrils that extended themselves from out of his jacket's back. Can't grab sludge? Izuku extended both his hands in a grabbing motion towards his friend. You can capture the person. The incoming fast red and black tentacles took the villain by surprise, causing him to stop moving for a second, allowing Izuku to coil his appendages around the trapped Katsuki's torso. Deku! You finally grew a pair. Took you long enough. Shouted Katsuki from inside the sludge. Not even hesitating, he replies, yeah. My legs kind of moved on their own. I am not really sure what I am doing. Having regained his senses, the sludge monster looked back at Izuku demanding, you again, brat. Get out of my way. But it was already too late. Even as the gathered heroes took the opportunity to save the kids, Izuku was trying to remember the sensation from all those years ago. Feeling the tendrils around his once again friend, Izuku pictured his first quirk training and pulled Katsuki towards him with a yank, freeing him from captivity. How dare you, the sludge villain barked, surging forward. Turning Katsuki around, Izuku yelled, Kaken, do it. With his now free arms, the explosive boy made a dreadful grin, and crossed his hands together, releasing his battle cry. Die! The resulting detonation through the street in a blinding flash. Once everyone regained their sight, they were all speechless by the subsequent visage. The sludge villain parts were sprayed all over the walls. And standing at the source of the explosion, both kids gasped for breath, Izuku Midoriya holding Katsuki Bakugo with his appendages. All at once, the gathered crowd lets loose a loud cheer. Deku! Called Katsuki from his high ground. Yes. Kaken? Replied Izuku, winded. Put me down before I kill you. Sure, Kaken. Said Izuku, with the first smile he had in years. Gently placing Katsuki on the floor as his extra appendages started to disintegrate, Izuku was finally looking at his friend for the first time in years. The same could be said about the blonde boy. Deku. Yes, Kaken. Just because you grew an attitude and saved me, it will not make up for the 7 years you acted like a wimp. You have a lot to catch up to, before thinking that you can get into UA. So don't let this moment of luck go over your head. You have a long way before you can start to think you are in the same league as I. Yes, Kaken. Said Izuku, as happy tears fell from his blackened eyes. While he gave the biggest grin he ever had. The wind blew her loose hair in front of her face, startling her for a moment. That was why she liked to wear her hair in buns, no loose strands to get into her eyes and no need to worry about getting it snagged onto things, but that wasn't normal. A proper girl should wear her hair loose. Yes, she was a normal girl, she had a normal life, had normal friends, went to a normal school and wore normal clothes. Everything in her life was the epitome of normal. And so another lunch PRD began. Oh, Himeken. Over here, Kami Utsushimi said as she stood up on her seat and waved her best friend over. Utsushimi. That's uncouth behavior. As a Shiketsu student you should never behave in such a frivolous manner, warned Seiji Shishikura from his seat next to her. Please Shishikura, don't antagonize her. Utsushimi, please don't shout, Toga can see you perfectly from the entrance, no need to disturb your classmate during lunch, Nagamasa Mora, the recently assigned class representative, attempted to reprimand. Seeing the scene her classmates created, Himiko took her chance to take a seat amongst them. And with that, the first year's quartet was completed. It had been a month since Himiko had arrived at Shiketsu High School with her middle school friend, Kami. 1 year since she let Kami convince her into coming to Shiketsu. 2 years since the last time she saw Izuku. She could still remember that fateful night. Never would she have guessed that she would have the chance to meet her Izuku again. That night in the alley was something totally out of her dreams. Having him rescue her, of her being able to talk to Izuku, to hold his hand, to see him covered in blood. That sure was a dream for her. Himiko still remembered their conversation. Well, it would be better to call that a one-sided vent session on her end, but she could still remember how Izuku looked on that night. In shock, panic, sorrow, lament. What happened to her Izuku? Where was that cheerful boy she met all those years ago? Who broke her precious Izuku? What happened to that bright-eyed boy who gave her hope all those years ago? What happened to leave him with such a hollow look in his eyes? She knew that answer. It was the same thing they did to her. They forced the both of them to wear masks, to hide their true selves so they could fit into society's normal. She was told to stop being herself. To shut all those feelings away. But something she learned was that even when you shut your feelings down, they will still grow inside of you. But it was all thanks to Izuku's words that she could pour all those feelings into her love for him. She could understand why they feared her. All her obsessions, all of her love. She was a strange girl, her normal was weird, but how could they do that to sweet Izuku? He was the one to show her what she could be. What her quirk could be. His words were what made her help Kami. His words helped her protect her normal self. Then the heroes let that happen to him. That was why she had been skeptical about becoming a hero. Sure, she still wanted to help others, that night in the alley proved it to her, but seeing Izuku's state really caught her off guard. She still wanted to protect what was precious to her, that was why she agreed to go to Shiketsu with Kami. When she suggested that they both become heroes at Shiketsu, Himiko remembered Izuku in that alley. Of how gruesomely he protected her. Of how despite him suppressing his normal, he let it all out when it meant saving her life. Being a hero was far from her first choice, not that she really even knew what that was. All she had going right now was that she wanted to protect him and anything else that was part of her normal life. Himiko? Himiko. What? Kami? Himiko was brought back from her thoughts. Are you well? "'Cause like, you totally zoned out for a moment," exclaimed Kami. "Nah, I'm fine. Just thinking about today's hero practice," she lied, hoping that would excuse her strange behavior. Seiji's eyes, somehow, narrowed. "Are you sure about that?" "You did seem down for a moment," Nagamasa added. After an uncomfortable silence, Himiko blinked, letting the scenery catch her eyes, but her three friends kept their gazes on her. "Yes, I'm sure," she protested. "Now, if you're all done interrogating me, I would like to eat my lunch." Kami brushed it off. She gets like that. Usually when she thinks about that bodashta. "Kami!" Himiko protested as her cheeks burned pink. "A boy? You know too well that Shiketsu students are prohibited from engaging in illicit relationships. Relax, she hasn't even seen him in years. What was his name again? Dekun? Izuku. And you know it," pouted Himiko. "Pfft," snorted Kami, trying to hold back a laugh. "Mora," Himiko whined, "you're the class rep, make her stop." Nagamasa gave the two girls a glance from behind his hairy face, took a moment to consider, and then he went back to eating his lunch. In the 4 weeks he had been interacting with this group, Nagamasa learned that when Himiko and Kami were involved, teasing was something that came with the package. It would be better to just tune it out, but that was something that Shishikura had yet to learn. "Toga, you, behave yourself." Seiji was close to popping a vein. Trying to steer the conversation in a new direction, Nagamasa said, "Ahem. If you guys don't mind me asking, since we're at hero training after lunch, would you mind helping me with my quirk? I seem to have hit a snag. When I try to stretch my hair to capture a target, or when I attempt any complex movements, my hair always ends up in knots." Asking for help seemed to do the trick. "Oh, so Mr. Class Rep is asking for my help?" teased Himiko. "That's enough, Toga," interrupted Seiji as he turned to Nagamasa. "There is no need for you to ask her for help, Mora. There's a reason Mr. Orioku chose you as the class representative. You know, she would have been the class representative if it wasn't for her antics," Nagamasa informed them casually. "She what?" shrieked Seiji. "What do you mean by that?" "Exactly what I said. Toga here is at the top of the class both academically and in hero training. If it wasn't for her behavior, she would have been the one chosen for class representative." Hearing those words must have been a huge shock for Seiji, as his narrow eyes had almost doubled in size. The sight of the stern boy now frozen in place just made both girls fall in laughter. They had never seen Seiji's eyes open up like that. There was even a rumor running around if he could even see with how narrow his eyes were. Seeing how the tension from before was no more, Nagamasa took this chance to ask the girls, again, about his dilemma. "So, about my hair problem. What do you suggest I could do?" What about hair products?" Kami suggested nonchalantly. "Hair products?" "Yeah. Hair products," Himiko added, as if she just had an epiphany. "Just use some sort of special conditioner so that your hair doesn't get tangled up when you try to stretch it and capture people." The hairy teen could see the angle she was coming from. Sure, there were products that helped with hair care. He even experimented a few times testing different creams and shampoos on his hair to see the effects, but never on such a big scale. Not with the amount of hair he had. But maybe he could ask the support department to help him with that. When he finally thought lunch could finally end peacefully, Himiko opened her mouth. Again. Why not ask Shishikura here? He definitely knows his way around hair care. With how he styles his hair to always look like that, he sure spends a lot of time in front of the mirror. It seems that her comment was able to snap Seiji back from his trance. Frustrated as he was, he insisted, "I don't use any hair products, just drop it already." "What do you mean? We lost contact with Hanaho. We sent her precisely due to her quirk. And besides, we didn't hear an announcement of her capture," rationalized Atsuha. "I'm just telling you that she is not answering her comm. She didn't send a distress signal like we planned, nor she said that she was going ghost." Aya. Atsuha punched the wall in her frustration. Things have been going well so far. The mission was simple, teams of 3 were assigned to protect a briefcase, while one student attempted to retrieve it. Atsuha was the leader of the team assigned to protect the target. She sent Hanaho to be the lookout for their team. Her quirk let her control and connect to plants around her, allowing her to listen to the leaves' vibrations and making her perfect to keep track of approaching targets. Meanwhile, she and Tsunehama stayed to guard the briefcase. Things were supposed to go well for them. In a 3 versus 1, her team had the advantage, but things started to fall apart as soon the trial started. The first 5 minutes passed in pure silence, then Hanaho had reported movement at the back of the facility. Tsunehama was sent to investigate, but after 2 minutes he came back with nothing. Soon after, Hanaho stopped responding to her comms. How could this be happening? Their opponent was a single individual with a non-combative quirk. Himiko Toga was supposed to be easy to deal with. All she had was a transformation quirk. During all their classes so far, Himiko had only excelled on team operations when making use of her quirk in conjunction with a group distraction so she could infiltrate the enemy team. All her accomplishments so far required backup. During her haze, Atsuha didn't notice Tsunehama approaching her from behind. Raising his fist, he launched a strike towards the back of her neck. In a last-second reflex, Atsuha activated her quirk, protecting her blind spot with a giant leaf. She then lunged herself forward, rolling on the floor at a safe distance from Tsunehama. "What the hell, Tsunehama? What do you think you're doing?" questioned Atsuha. All she had for a response was a sly smile from the sand manipulator. "That's all you have, miss, this is gonna be easy?" Toga asked Atsuha, "But how?" Tsunehama didn't report being attacked, nor was his capture announced. "How did you get his blood?" The fake Tsunehama gave her a toothy grin, then threw his earpiece towards her. "That's a secret," teased Himiko as her disguise started to melt. As the gray sludge ran down her body, it revealed the black bodysuit underneath it. The vertical red lines adorned the waistline around her belt, which was filled with different kinds of gear. Walking towards the downed girl, the now revealed Himiko Toga stretched her left arm to activate her support gear, Blood Sting. The long glove on her left hand started to shift, the straps below her shoulder swirled downwards around her wrist, taking the shape of a Fulan gauntlet. With a second flick of her hand, a long needle came out from it. Small empty capsules could be seen adorning the back of the wrist-mounted syringe. With one swift move, Himiko dashed forwards towards Atsuha, lifting her needle to strike the girl down. But as she made contact, she saw that her weapon had pierced the layered shield made from Atsuha's strengthened leaves. Taking that opening, Atsuha moved to grapple Himiko while she struggled with her jammed weapon. "Ha! Too slow, vampire girl," boasted Atsuha as she pulled on Himiko's hair. The cat fight continued until Himiko took her chance and kicked Atsuha's plexus. That move stunned Atsuha for enough time to get out of the hold and slip behind the girl. Fidgeting with the items on her belt, Himiko pulled a vial and loaded it onto her gauntlet. Struggling to keep the leaf girl in place, Himiko managed to inject her with the paralyzing agent. Letting go of her, Himiko rushed towards the briefcase. "No. You don't," forced Atsuha, as she struggled to keep herself up. But it was all in vain. "Don't struggle, Atsukan. You'll have a hard time moving for the next 2 minutes. So better you stay put till it wears off," advised Himiko as she skipped over towards the table. As she picked up the briefcase, the alarm sounded off. Himiko Toga retrieved the briefcase. Hero wins the match. As the real Tsunehama arrived at the room, after spending the last few minutes looking for Himiko around the base, Himiko discreetly took a sip from the newly filled red vial on her gauntlet while no one was looking. Another day, another fight, another sip, another fix. That was her reality. Her life in this society. The same society her Izuku had to go through. The society she was planning to change. Class proceeded as normal after that. Mr. Orioku gave his review to Atsuha's team and Himiko's performance in the simulation. "Does anyone know what actions led to Miss Atsuha's defeat?" Mr. Orioku asked his class. Almost immediately a hand went up. "Yes, Shishikura," he sighed. "Sir." Shouted Seiji, "Atsuha got tricked by Toga's disguise and lowered her guard, even though she knew who she was going against, sir." "Yes, Shishikura, Miss Atsuha did underestimate her opponent. She was well aware about Miss Toga's ability to infiltrate teams using distractions. She was aware of her numerical advantage, but she didn't consider that Miss Toga had other skills besides her quirk," Mr. Orioku clarified. As we saw, Mr. Sanahama was ambushed by Miss Toga as soon as he arrived at her location. She deliberately let her location be revealed so she could get her hands on Mr. Sanahama's earpiece. After that she let him go free so his takedown wouldn't be announced. Now without communications and on a goose chase, Toga used that opening to attempt to reach her target. So, as we all saw, Miss Toga was able to destabilize her opponent's command structure all by herself, using that diversion to catch her opponents off guard. Mr. Orioku ended the performance review highlighting the importance of always expecting more from the enemy, and reminding Himiko that letting Sanohama go free, even if it worked, was a huge gamble and she could have failed if any of the other teammates had come back. Class proceeded as usual after that. At the changing room, Himiho was the only one left. "Did you see it? Did you see it?" exclaimed Himiko. Atsukan had no clue I was Tsunahama. Sitting next to her was a little kid with fluffy green hair. His red shoes dangled in the air, not touching the ground. His baby cheeks accentuated the big green eyes that sparkled with joy at hearing her words. "Yeah. You were so cool, Himikan," blurted the boy. "You didn't even take Sanohama's blood in your fight so he wouldn't suspect you would try to impersonate him. How did you do that? Does your quirk let you store the blood for later? Does it have a limit on how long you can hold blood? Can you store more than one person's blood in you? Does your quirk have a volume limit?" The boy kept muttering through his monologue on Himiko's quirk. The shine in the boy's eyes could only be compared to Himiko's. "Himikan, are you coming?" Kami's voice called from the entrance. "Yeah, just a sec, Kami," she replied. By Izuku, Himiko waved at the empty seat as she made her way to the door. It was that time of the month again. She was once again standing in front of that familiar white door. Opening it, she saw the state of the room. No matter where it was, they always looked the same. An empty coffee table between two chairs and a sofa, bland paintings on the walls, and lamps illuminating the room. They were all the same. Quirk counselors' therapist offices all lacked personality. "Ah, Miss Toga, you have arrived. Please, take a seat." The doctor gestured to an empty chair. She was hesitant at first, but Himiko made her way into the room, taking a seat on the sofa. She already knew how these things worked. First, introduction and the fake pleasantries. "It's nice to have you here. I am Dr. Kaiho. I know it might be difficult to change therapists, but I will ensure you have a smooth transition. I took my time to read your file from Dr. Kodachai. I hope we can take our time to get to know one another a little bit." "That's so thoughtful of you." Himiko smiled. Followed by the interrogation. "Okay, Toga, I know we spoke briefly on the phone right before you enrolled at Shiketsu, but I'd like to just start with a few broad questions and go from there, so I will ask, what do you think brought you here? Because society says that my normal is wrong, that I am wrong, and these monthly sessions are the only thing keeping my parents from throwing me out. I think I'm here so I can better control my impulses. So I can be safe around others. I'm so sorry you've been dealing with that for so long. You are so brave. We see a lot of that here in the practice, so you are not alone." Dr. Kaiho gave her a supportive look. "Now, I know since I read your file, but how does this impact your life right now?" "Impacting my life? You're asking how this impacts my life? I'm seen as a monster by my own parents. I feel that I'm close to losing it at any moment. Izuku's words are what's keeping me sane. He is the only one that cares about me, the only one that understands what I am going through. He gave me blood when I needed it. He saved me when I needed it. I want Izuku. I want to be with him. I want to know what his blood tastes like. It's been tough, but I managed to live with it. I have support from my friends that makes it easier." That wasn't a lie. She did find it easier to control her outbursts since arriving at Shiketsu. Having Kami around was a constant reminder that she was a good person. And being surrounded by people that didn't find her quirk disgusting meant that she didn't have to pretend that much anymore. "Do you have any moments of difficulty controlling your power? Any cravings you've to suppress? How do you manage them?" "I have constant cravings all the time. When I see someone I like, I have this need to want to become them. To want to know what their blood tastes like. All that keeps me from attacking them are the small sips of blood I take from my classmates during hero practice. Sometimes I have bad days, but I manage to ground myself. I just need to remind myself what's important." Dr. Kaiho kept looking at Himiko while not even once writing on her pad. That irritated Himiko. Normally the reason for not taking notes would mean they already gave up on her, that she was just another lost cause. But that stare she was giving, Himiko could see that she was listening to her, that her words mattered. She only found that expression on those that saw her as a study case. As a freak to be analyzed. But the woman in front of her didn't show any signs of that. It was almost as if she really cared. "Thank you for answering all those nosy questions, Himiko. I know this is a hard topic to talk about. It's very clear to me that suppressing your power is really impacting your life. That must be so hard." Dr. Kaiho's voice showed understanding and worry. "But you can't just make it go away by being hard on yourself, which I already hear that you are doing. If you could kick this by just telling yourself to calm down, you wouldn't be here right now. But you are, and I'm glad you are." She smiled, looking directly into Himiko's eyes. "You don't need to be alone with this anymore. I feel confident that we can get this problem under control and you can feel like yourself again. If you choose to work with me, we will explore the causes and triggers of your cravings so we can play offense, not just defense. We want to see those things coming, have a plan, and be able to control them, not suppress them. She moved on, offering more ideas. I will also work with you on some pretty easy tweaks to your nighttime routine to help you sleep better. I also think, from what you have shared with me, that simply having a way to release those urges would be helpful. You felt alone and embarrassed about your power, and I understand, but having an output for it will help us move past the shame and implement these strategies. They shared a gaze, and Himiko felt understood, so I'm confident that together we can really help you, but first let me ask, have you ever heard about meta-liberation? It was the Monday following the sludge incident. During the weekend, Izuku couldn't stop thinking of what happened. He had used his quirk. He had used his quirk on another person. He had used his quirk on another person while he was at his limit. If anyone had told him a week ago that he would willingly use his quirk in public, he would have told them that they were crazy. That morning before classes was when it all started to sink in. He had used his quirk on another person while he was at his limit. What was he thinking? He could have lost control, and with all those people around him, he could have attacked any of them. What would have happened in that situation? During his walk to school, his mind was in overdrive trying to process what he had done, what had made him lose focus and attempt such a risky move. What made him forget about the consequences and leap into danger? There were heroes around taking care of the situation, so why did he decide to take action and use his quirk? What if he was recognized? That fight was being recorded by reporters. What if someone from class watched it? Of course they would have. What would he do if they started to ask about his quirk? He wasn't ready to show off his quirk like the others. What if they found out the truth about him? Izuku was staring at the door, body shaking while he twisted his brain like a washcloth, trying to wring out a drop of prescience as to how his classmates would react. Hesitantly he reached for the door handle, fearing what was waiting for him on the other side. After he opened the door, all eyes turned to him. His teacher, classmates, even Katsuki. All stared at him with judgmental gazes. And somehow, he was the last one to arrive. Izuku made his way to his seat. He noticed how the gazes kept following him, but once he looked at them, they would immediately avert their eyes from him. Behind him, he could feel the whispers crawling into his ears. All sorts of names saying what he already knew. Go away, you villain. Dmed monster. Filthy ghoul? No. His voice cracked as he attempted to cover his head with his shaking hands, hoping that would block the words. I'm not. I swear I'm not. Yes, you are. I'm really not a monster. I didn't do anything. Please. He pleaded uncontrollably to the voices. Please. It's all just a misunderstanding. Don't call me a villain. Then, you're a monster. Those words were what he feared. Dr. Kadachi was right all along. Him trying to be a hero would only lead to tragedy. I'm really not. Why don't any of you understand? How can I be a V-villain when I saved Kaken? Shut up, freak. You got in the way of the heroes, just like a villain. And that quirk of yours? You monster. The headache immediately started to worsen as the voices surrounded his seat. Soon, a new voice slithered forth in Izuku's mind, telling him sweet little things. Aren't you tired of playing nice? They already know you're actually a monster. Why bother to keep pretending you're like the rest of them? Why can't you all see? He tried to hold back his tears as his whimpers echoed throughout the classroom. With each sob, the voices grew louder and louder, until they drowned out all of his thoughts. As his final plea, a shriek of hysteria tore through Izuku's mouth and lungs. Why can't any of you bloodbags see how hard I've been trying? He'd done his very best, did everything in his power to stay out of trouble. Anything so that he didn't stand out, so that his quirk was kept secret. Yet look where that led him to. False hope given to him, his secret revealed in the news, deemed a monster by what might as well be the entire country. Rumors would spread and eventually, all chances of him living a normal life would be gone. Rumors of how his quirk worked, rumors of how he attacked Katsuki, rumors of how he had to drink blood to live. All because of his quirk. The same quirk that gave him hope when he was 4, that gave him joy during those years of training when he was younger, but was just a hindrance to him now. Something that labeled him as a villain. The secret that he worked so hard to keep together, shattered. The normal life that he worked so hard to keep in balance was now in pieces. And those pieces were raining down on him mercilessly like broken glass. I just wanted to be a hero. The young teen cried to the voices, as all his emotions flooded out from him. He clenched his eyes shut as crimson pupils emerged from his eyes. Is that too much to ask from society? Monsters can't be heroes. As soon as you accept that, the better it will be. Izuku didn't know what to do, or why he still tried to pretend at that point. Was he a hero? A villain? A regular person? Or just a bloodthirsty monster? He had enough of it, all he wanted at that moment was to be alone. Soon the exhaustion caught up to him, and so he gave in to that familiar voice in his head. The hold that he kept all those years was released. Immediately, Izuku stopped shaking, and his breathing became stable. He slowly opened his eyes and stared at the waving figures that surrounded him. His so-called classmates that didn't hesitate to shun him when given the chance, so why should he keep caring? They already voiced their opinions about him. He slowly uncoiled that familiar sensation from his back, and in one movement, he slashed at the surrounding crowd of students. Cries soon followed the mist of red. Glancing towards them, Izuku noted that he only inflicted superficial cuts to his soon-to-be food. His skills sure have dulled as the years went by. Before anyone could react, Izuku lunged forward to the closest person to him. Haunting cries filled the classroom as his fangs bit down on his classmate's flesh. Blood dripped from the ceiling, staining his uniform, as his predatory tails weaved through the bodies of his escaping victims. The glee in his face was a reminder that his true nature would never be accepted by those around him. And that he was AFO for expecting anything else. Cold sweat woke Izuku from his sleeping state, hysteric red eyes snapping open. He sat up from his bed, breathing rapidly as his head swiveled back and forth, searching for something that would tell him that it was all a dream. Soon, his gaze landed on his All Might-themed alarm clock. Monday, 3:30 a.m. Pulling his knees to his chest, his back rising and falling at a rapid pace. There was just one thought in his mind at that moment. He had 5 more hours till it all fell apart. Without any warning, Izuku's eyes turned black. Well, that was a lie. Izuku was expecting something to happen. After the night he had, ideas of what could happen ran through his mind. But going from an afterthought to being treated like a local celebrity was not on his list. The Monday following the incident, both Izuku and Katsuki were swarmed by questions from their classmates. Did you really get attacked? What was it like to fight a villain? Did you meet any heroes? Those and many more questions were asked to the two boys at Aldera Junior High, once they set foot in their classroom. Katsuki was the better of the two at handling the sudden spike of attention. Simple replies such as, "Yes, you extra," to, "No sheet, of course I blasted him." Off, was all he needed to disperse the crowds that gathered around him. Meanwhile, Izuku's newfound popularity was too much for him to handle. Having all those kids surrounding him only brought more anxiety and panic to the boy. Luckily, no one noticed the difference between this new awkwardness and the usual one. In between his half-spoken answers, Izuku's quirk activating was now a common sight to the classroom. The previous green-eyed boy now sported a pair of black and red eyes most of the days. At first, his loose trigger was all due to his anxiety of being surrounded by his classmates, but after he first experienced his eyes shifting in front of his class, Izuku, and his peers, found themselves used to the sight of red eyes on the boy. He soon took his newfound situation as a challenge to become a hero. Yes, a hero. Izuku Midoriya was going to try and become a hero after all. Following his long-doused spark being rekindled, Izuku found himself back in the path of heroism. The problem was that he had no idea of where to start. Izuku took it upon himself to write down a new entry in his notebook about his quirk. In his new entry, he added a list of challenges that he had to overcome to be able to go to UA, and at the top of the list was his hunger. At first, he wasn't sure how to solve his dilemma. The easiest solution was for him to get more blood, but he wasn't sure if he was allowed to request any more from the detrimental quirk program. Even if he was allowed, he still didn't know how much more blood to ask for. Without the extra blood, he couldn't really go all out during training, so what else could he work on in the meantime? Well, if he couldn't test the maximum power of his quirk, maybe he could at least figure out how long he could last without blood while still using his quirk. "Mom, I'm home." Inko Midoriya looked away from the kitchen, gasping after looking in her son's direction. "Izuku, your eyes. Is your quirk acting up again? Didn't you have enough to drink today?" She tried to approach him to check on his status, but she kept hesitating on reaching out to him in the midst of her panic. Izuku soon realized the misunderstanding that he created and shifted his eyes back to normal. "Mom, no, it's nothing like that." He tried to explain by showing her his scaras returning to white. "I just forgot to change them on the way back." "You forgot to change them back?" Inko asked in confusion, looking at her son with a startled expression. "Well, Izuku paused and tried again, expressing his hesitation to her. "I kind of decided to apply to UA and well I was trying to go back with my quirk training so maybe I decided to see if I could control my transformation because I'm trying to see how long I last, and then." "Breathe." Inko held her hand up, causing Izuku to stop his mumble storm and reacquire some of his lost oxygen while his mother gathered her thoughts. Come in first. Let's sit down before you explain to me what happened, Inko told her son. Gesturing to the dinner table, they both made their way in. Inko sat at the end of the table, while Izuku sat on her right, and he looked at her with a kind of uncertain hope. Inko considered his preview statement for a few more moments and then looked back at him. What, exactly, happened? Well, Izuku swallowed. Remember I said I gave up on being a hero? Yes, she said with a forlorn sigh at the memory. As she watched her son fidget for a few more moments, something clicked in her mind and she voiced her thoughts aloud. Oh, did you change your mind after all these years? Izuku's face froze, then nodded, and she knew then that that was what had him all tongue-tied. I mean, maybe, but I. Breathe, she told him, smiling. You're overthinking this, Izuku. But, he struggled again. I mean after all these years and well, I kinda like I just don't deserve to be a hero after what I did. Not deserving? There's no reason for you to feel that you don't deserve that, Inko assured her son. There's nothing wrong with trying to follow your dreams, even after giving up once. Even if you were to find yourself pursuing another career, it doesn't mean the time you spent on your previous attempt was a waste, you know? You're still young. You're allowed to make mistakes and change your mind. Most kids his age would probably be embarrassed to show such vulnerability to their parents, but Izuku never felt that way with his mom. He really appreciated what his mother did for him, and would gladly do anything to show it. So he went in for a hug and cried in relief in her arms. After pulling away, she looked at him curiously. What took you so long? School ended some time ago. He took a moment to wipe his tears before he responded. After what happened last week, some kids surrounded me and Kaken, wanting to ask a few questions about the event. From how eager they looked, I just couldn't say no. I see, she said at his newfound popularity. How was your first interview, Mr. Hero? Mom. He blushed at her teasing. It wasn't an interview. Just some kids asking questions, and Kaken did most of the talking before he scared them away. She held a laugh at the display of her son and his friend. Little Katsuki kept resembling Mitsuki more and more. That's good. I assume after the day you had, your hunger must be acting up then? Why don't you get some blood? Well, he was cut mid-sentence by the sound of his belly. He looked at Inko and scratched his head sheepishly. Sorry. Yeah, I would like that. She waved it off. That's okay, dear, it's good to have fun sometimes. She winked at him. I just hope you won't let Bakugo do all the talking after you two become heroes. She gave a small laugh at her son's visible reaction to the joke. He sighed, taking his empty thermos out of his bag, and headed for the kitchen to clean it and get a fresh blood bag. While returning, he faced the living room and saw that the TV was playing what looked to be the latest news. Inko noticed his curiosity and decided to give a brief summary of what happened. Apparently there's been a wave of assaults on individuals with mutant quirks. In worry, she added, Izuku, be careful when you go outside from now on. With your quirk. I don't want you to be targeted. Seeing the anxiety in his mother's face, Izuku tried to reassure her, don't worry mom. As long as I don't transform my eyes, I don't look any different from a quirkless person. With his mother calmed down, he slurped on his blood and got closer to the TV. To view the rest of it for himself. The reporter was going on about the increase in cases of assault that had occurred throughout the country in the past months, a high percentage of the victims apparently possessing mutant quirks. While having no idea if the cases were connected or not, the police had no choice but to treat all cases as isolated events and work from there. While they managed to apprehend some of the aggressors, all of them were just small-time criminals attempting to get some easy cash by targeting individuals in the outskirts of the cities. Along with some couple quarrels gone wrong, and what they believe were slasher victims, all other victims seemed to have no connection whatsoever. The reason for the majority of victims being mutants remained a mystery. Izuku blinked in an attempt to shrug off the blood high he felt when he saw the crime scenes. Inko gave him a stern look. Even if you can hide your quirk, there were still people without mutations that got injured. It's without a doubt dangerous, Izuku. Don't stay late outside without a reason, you never know whether or not you will be targeted. And stay close to populated areas. I promise I will. He had to say that at least. Even if she was asking for him to do the opposite of what he had been doing for the past 6 years. I'll be careful when I'm out. That may have sounded ridiculous, but with those numbers, this was something not to be trifled with. He decided he'd seen enough and made his way to the kitchen to dispose of his now empty blood bag. But things were a little odd. They said there was no connection between all the victims, other than the odd amount of mutant quirks, but from what he saw from the pictures, most of them had some form of secondary mutations not related to their quirks. He placed the bag in the pathogen bin under the sink and rinsed his mouth with water, washing off the leftover taste of blood. The water continued to run as the sink slowly started to get filled up. But then that begs the question, would secondary mutations be considered the same as mutant quirks? That was the connection between attacks, wasn't it? Even being so far apart, the increasing number of cases must mean they were premeditated. Which means they were coordinated. Was there a group targeting people with mutations? If so, why didn't the hero or the police see the connection? The sink was now threatening to flood with water, and Izuku was still oblivious to it. No, they definitely would have seen it. It's a small connection, but still a link between them. They must have had some kind of reason to limit the information given to the media. Maybe they didn't want to clue the group in that they found a pattern to the crimes. It was either that they were trying to avoid the information being leaked or they were trying to avoid panic on the population that releasing the information would cause. He saw how his mother reacted to the news. A sudden wet feeling at his belly snapped him out of his musings. "What the, oh shit!" he yelped. "Language!" Inko shouted from the couch. As much as she enjoyed seeing Katsuki and Izuku get along, she worried about what kind of vocabulary her son was being taught by the other boy. Sorry. What happened? I kinda made the sink overflow again." He hurried to close the tap. Inko sighed, being used to her son's antics. "From the muttering, I guess you were daydreaming again?" Izuku froze. "Wait. Was I saying all that out loud?" "Not entirely, but I could hear your voice slowly getting clearer." "You always do that when you think about something for too long," she said from the edge of the kitchen. "That's not too bad, you can just change your shirt." "Sorry. I got lost in thought again." "Yes, I noticed. What was it this time? Or is it some teenager thing you rather wouldn't tell your mother?" Izuku chuckled weakly at that. "It's just that most of the victims from those assaults had some form of mutation, and that might be a link between them. It's really just a theory I just came up with on the spot. I don't really have evidence to back it up, so don't take them seriously." Inko stood there with her jaw open. You got that just from that brief report?" "Yes." He looked at her sheepishly, shifting in place. "I was just thinking about it a little." "A little?" She couldn't help but chuckle. "It's still impressive, you really are your father's son." His head snapped back at her words. "Really?" "Yes, really. You both have lines of thought outside the normal. It's honestly hard to keep up with you two sometimes." He'd always thought of his dad as an incredible thinker. To be compared to the man made him happy. "Mom, I'm going to my room to change now." "HM? Oh yeah, sure sweetie," she replied, making way for him. "Okay then." He left the kitchen but was stopped just before he could pass through the door. "Wait, I actually forgot to mention." Inko grabbed a cooler box that was near the cupboard. "Today at the hospital, I talked to my supervisor and I was given permission to retrieve these." She pulled a blood bag from the cooler. Every 6 weeks the hospital disposes of unused blood bags due to the expiration of the anticoagulant used to preserve the blood. But instead of incinerating them, I was allowed to bring them home. "For you, Izuku." Inko started to lose focus on her words. "I know it's not much, but I noticed how you've been struggling these past weeks with your usual doses. And I thought that even if it's just an extra bag, I thought you might have liked it." Izuku immediately turned around and, in a blur, hugged his mother. "Thank you. I love you, Mom. You have no idea how this helps." "Huh? Izuku. Baby, there is no need for that, it's just a few more blood bags a week, it's not much to make a difference in your usual amount. Isn't it?" she asked worriedly. His eyes widened in panic. He didn't mean to make her think he was having problems. "No. I mean, even just having 2 extra bags per week makes sense in case of an emergency. Can you just put them in the fridge with the others? I just drank one." "Of course, sweetie." She opened the cooler to the fridge and took the bags out. Izuku had to keep himself from drooling at the sight of it. He just had his fill for the day, and he was determined to see how far he could last with a single bag. At least now he had some extra bags for when he decided to be more active in his training. "Would you like something else to drink?" He broke out of his pondering and snapped his attention back to his mother. "Why yeah. Coffee would be nice." After closing the fridge, she grabbed the coffee pot and fetched some water to heat up. "It'll be done in 5 minutes, I'll bring it to you when it's ready. I'll be in my room then." With that, he left the room and went to his bedroom. Closing the door behind him, he made his way to his drawer for a new shirt and plopped tiredly in his chair. "One more thing to add to my important things to worry about list." He sighed to himself as he pulled one of his notebooks. He had been expecting to survive his training with his usual amount of blood, but his mother's surprise really came in handy. He now didn't have to worry about running out of blood in case he decided to stretch his quirk, so to speak. "I guess in the end I really will be able to try out some physical training." He started to write in his quirk section of the notebook. Once again, he felt terrible for keeping secrets from his mother. But the moment he hadn't told her about his hunger increase was the moment he had set himself on this path. She still believed that he was doing mostly fine, having no idea of how his hunger had grown over the years. His 3 blood bags per day now just barely prevented him from starving. It was truly affecting him mentally and physically, like how he has stopped being active over the years to preserve energy or the constant state of hunger he lived with. Keeping up those appearances only proved to show how much he had to overcome if he wished to join UA. He just hoped that the extra blood would be enough to let him train, even if just the bare minimum. Izuku let out a shaky breath, laying his head on top of his notes. He really wished he had a better alternative to his problems than to rely on expiring blood, then he could use his quirk all he wanted without fear of losing control. He heard a knock at the door and he stood up to open it. Taking his drink and thanking his mother, he returned to his desk, taking a sip from the mug. It was a bitter brand. Since his dietary restrictions, he really missed tastes other than copper. So whenever he had a chance, he would go for extreme blends of coffee, just to break off from the usual routine. It wasn't even close to what normal food tasted, but he had long ago forgotten what Katsudon tasted like. Taking another sip of the bitter drink, he returned to the pages in front of him. Now let's see if I can come up with anything useful. The following days were uneventful. Izuku managed to last the entire week just drinking a little over 2 bags per day while keeping his eyes transformed. He made sure to take hero-patrolled routes on his way to school so he could avoid being targeted when his eyes were transformed. It was on the following Friday, just after the end of class, when Katsuki approached his desk. "So what are you even doing to train for UA, nerd?" asked the blonde with a smirk on his face. That took him by surprise. "Well, Kaken, you see, since it's been a long time since I last used my quirk, I kind of have been trying to." As anyone who knew Izuku should expect, Katsuki's question was met with an endless stream of mumbles as Izuku tried to explain his line of thought. But Katsuki stopped Izuku's rant with a pop when he heard Izuku implemented fasting training to improve his endurance while using his quirk. "You moron!" Katsuki exclaimed. "Was all that crying from years ago about you being a monster for nothing? Wasn't it you who said that your quirk needed blood or else you would attack people? Was that all a lie?" He pointed an accusing finger at Izuku. Izuku recoiled from his friend's reminder. Katsuki was right, the main reason he gave up on his dream was because of that fear. "You seem to have no clue of what you're doing," added Katsuki. His friend was right, who was he to think that he could train himself to become a hero? He, who was too afraid to use his quirk for 6 years, didn't deserve a second chance. "That's why I'm taking over your quirk training, nerd," Katsuki proudly proclaimed. "You what?" "Shut up, old hag," Katsuki replied by shutting his phone. There was loud stomping before the door was thrown open and Katsuki came face to face with the matriarch of the house. He looked down at Inko and cleared his throat. "Hello, auntie." He tilted his head to the side before a confused look came over his face. "Where's the nerd?" Inko chuckled softly. "Oh, Izuku? He is still getting ready. Please, come in." She gestured to him. "Thanks." Katsuki huffed slightly as he hurried past Inko towards Izuku's room. Arriving at the door, Katsuki saw the same old All Might-themed sign signaling Izuku's room. He couldn't believe Izuku still had that. How many years has it been? 10? 14? Part of him was glad that after everything, Izuku was still the same as before. As he opened the door, his eyes twitched when he saw Izuku slouched over his desk surrounded by open notebooks. Looking closely, they were his old hero analysis notes. He thought Izuku had gotten rid of them all those years ago. Katsuki wasn't sure how to feel about the scene. For once Izuku was focusing on how to improve his quirk, but on the other hand, he was making Katsuki wait. When in doubt, scream at it. "Deku!" Izuku gasped and pulled away from his desk. "Kaken!" He squealed in fear as his eyes flashed red at the sight of the explosive blonde. Izuku had his arms in front of him as if trying to shield himself from his friend's murderous gaze. "Kaken, I can explain. You see, when you said that you would be helping with my training, I wasn't sure what you had in mind, so I decided to check some references on hero fights, and I came up with a few suggestions for you." Izuku desperately tried to come up with a reasonable excuse as to why he was late, but nothing came to his mind at that moment. He panicked. "Kaken. Kaken. I dash." Katsuki smiled down at Izuku before placing his hand on top of Izuku's shoulder. "The best heroes out there showed signs of greatness even as students," Katsuki said as he tightened his hold. "The stunt from last week showed that you have some talent, but just that won't cut it for UA." He continued, giving him a toothy grin. "In other words, don't you dare waste my time, nerd." Izuku squeaked at Katsuki's heated palm on his shoulder. "Why yes, Kaken." Katsuki took a moment to make sure that Izuku understood the message before taking his hand off the now singed shoulder. If you get it, then show up to training on time. Don't make me come and drag you. MHM. MHM. Izuku quickly nodded. As Inko went to check on the boys, she could see Katsuki dragging her flailing son by the entrance door. Auntie, the nerd and I are going out to train. Don't expect us before noon, he shouted before slamming the door on his way out. What a familiar scene that was. It reminded her of years past. How time flies. Boom. Again. Takoba Beach seemed an odd but good place to train, and it was an appropriate setting for them, hidden away, abandoned, a dumping ground of broken appliances. No one would notice two kids using their quirks in the open when behind all the piles of trash. Izuku was surprised that Katsuki found the place, to begin with. Using the broken appliances as training dummies served as a great workout for their quirks. He would just prefer it if Katsuki stopped aiming his explosion so close to his face. Izuku's fingers slowly curled into fists, the sound of waves hitting the shore, and the crackle of explosions filled the ringing in his ears. As soreness could be felt spreading throughout his muscles, the singes on his face slowly disappeared as their fight progressed. Running across the landfill, Izuku hid behind a broken fridge, panting and out of breath. He clutched the side where Katsuki's last blow hit him. The unreal chaos was side by side with the frantic panting of the young boy. Suddenly, a flash followed by a heatwave blew by him, as the fridge was no more. Kaken, do you really think this is necessary? Is fighting you really the only way for me to learn fast? Izuku blurted out, don't you think this is a little too much? A little late to pull back, Deku. I told you I would train you, so SCK it up and fight me already. Katsuki looked far too eager for what he was doing. An explosion roared on his hands, letting sparks spill out as he lunged forwards. Katsuki always had the right instincts when he fought others. The faster you acted, the more unprepared your opponent would be, especially someone that lacked experience like Deku. That was why Katsuki had to hammer new fighting instincts into Izuku's bones. So he would show the nerd how to react in a real fight. He started with an explosive right hook to the boy's face, but Izuku barely managed to raise his arm to block it. Feeling the burn slowly dissipating, Izuku quickly turned around and ran. Soon he came face to face with a pile of trash. Turning back the way he came from, he saw his adversary quickly approaching. Cornered and struggling to escape, Izuku blindly swung his fist at the boy approaching him in hopes it would do something. His fist managed to connect, but soon after he found himself laying on his back, with a fist above his face, ready to come down with an explosion at him. And this is when the villain kills you. Gotta be tougher than that to stay alive, Deku. At times like these, Izuku wondered how invested Katsuki was in training him, and how much of that was just him wanting an excuse to fight him. Looks like you took a few steps in the wrong direction, Katsuki spoke, his voice sounding condescending. I know you just got started, but you are shit at this. You fought way better when we were kids. The boy on the ground let out a dry sigh, his eyes returning to normal. I'm sorry, Kaken. I don't think I'm fit to do this. Taken aback by Izuku's self-depreciation, Katsuki couldn't hold back his frustration. Stop whining, Deku. You know what must be done. This is the best way for you to get ready for UA. You said it yourself. Not moving from his position on the floor, Izuku covered his face, hiding his eyes with his uninjured arms. Maybe Dr. Kodachai was right. Maybe I'm unfit to be a hero. Maybe society would be better if I just gave up on this silly dream. Izuku said in response, his eyes now the same red as his blood, a simple twitch sending the tears falling into the ground. Being fed up by Izuku's depressive monologue, Katsuki decided to take action and stop being nice to his friend. Pulling Izuku by the collar, Katsuki dragged his face so they would be eye to eye. He then said, if you do that, Deku, you will be admitting that you wasted my time, and that will give me a reason to kill you. Honestly, that will be one hell of a bad time. Staring at each other in silence, neither of them dared to avert their gaze. After a while, both boys started to laugh at Katsuki's last words. Extending a hand, Katsuki pulled Izuku up from his place on the ground. Moving back to their original positions, Katsuki threw a coffee can at Izuku. Catching the drink midair, Izuku drank it in one go. With the two now ready to continue, they both nodded, taking a ready stance. It was all quiet, but the waves crashed on the sand. With no countdown, both waited to see who would make the first move and start their fight. In a display totally out of character, Izuku threw the first punch. Caught by surprise, Katsuki managed to release a small explosion that sent him to the side, dodging Izuku's first attack. Taking the opening in front of him, Katsuki charged for an assault. This time though, Katsuki was ready. He struck out both arms, explosions following his movements, his blows connecting with Izuku's torso. The blow caught Izuku by surprise, and Katsuki saw his friend being launched back, now on all fours, gasping for air. Picking himself up shakily, Izuku once again raised his arms on guard, determination never leaving his eyes. "That's better," remarked Katsuki, fire now in his eyes, on seeing his friend's renewed fighting spirit. After trading more blows, they soon stood in front of each other. Katsuki sported 2 angry bruises and a bleeding nose. Meanwhile, Izuku didn't look too bad. His clothes were all ripped and burned, and his skin spotted a few burn marks, but nothing at the level of his opponent. It hadn't occurred to Katsuki, until he had finally traded blows with Izuku, of how resilient he was. No matter how many times he punched, kicked, or blew the nerd up, nothing seemed to physically affect Izuku for long. The only damage he managed to inflict were superficial burns that were quickly healed. Well, just because it healed it didn't mean that he didn't feel those blows. Their match had been going for over 5 minutes, most of what the extras in Aldera could handle. Seeing that nothing he did could affect the boy's body, Katsuki resorted to his last-ditch effort. Barotrauma. An injury caused by the drastic change in the air pressure. In other words, diver's disease. An explosion that goes off right next to his ear would be enough to knock him out. Izuku could heal that. He hoped. Throwing a telegraph jab towards Izuku's head. Katsuki held his hand open, right after Izuku managed to dodge it. With the palm facing the green-haired boy's ear, Katsuki released the culmination of all his explosions. The shockwave went point-blank between the boys. Katsuki was launched across the beach towards a pile of rubbish that cushioned his landing. Taking a few moments to clear his mind. Katsuki could still hear the buzz from the blast. Looking past his disorientation, Katsuki tried to find where Izuku was sent to. "DMN that nerd. Where is he? If he is dead, I will not stop hearing it from the hag." After pondering what else his mother would do to him if he had killed Izuku, he saw some movement from where Izuku should have landed. From the scraps a few meters away from him, a creature of black and red crawled its way out of the rubble. In its body, cuts and bruises started to mend themselves, bones cracked as if relocating back together, and 2 tendrils, red like blood, sprouted from behind it. Katsuki's blood ran cold at the sight of that. Adrenaline spiked, and for a split second, he considered attacking the thing with extreme prejudice. He was thankful that he quickly remembered what stood in front of him wasn't a monster. Not because he was going to hurt his friend, but because he felt that if he tried, he would have no chance of escaping. From the impact suffered, the pile of scraps behind the creature came crumbling down. But before Katsuki could do anything, the 2 tendrils that shielded the creature moved. Unable to follow its movements, Katsuki couldn't believe what unfolded in front of him. Without leaving its position, the 2 faux tails shredded through the falling debris into smithereens. Car parts cut through like butter, house appliances crushed like paper, and wooden parts pierced like cloth. Katsuki was speechless at the sight of that. Memories of years ago came sprawling over his mind. Memories of a playground evening. Memories of blood and pain. Memories of a crying Izuku. Was all that crying about him being a monster true? Was there really a reason to fear him, or were those idiots exaggerating and making him out to be some kind of villain? Were they right in trying to sabotage his dreams of being a hero? And why the F was he even concerned about all of that in the first place? Deku wasn't dangerous to society. He hadn't killed anybody. And anyone who said otherwise can go ahead and SCK his FINGD-. What lowlifes, he thought. What a bunch of stupid extras, not even extras, FING audience members, part of some shitty but audience laugh track. Who the F do they think they are to say what Deku could or couldn't be? Katsuki's trail of thought was interrupted by a pair of glistering red appendages hitting his side, Izuku slamming into him with all his force. He screamed in surprise and shock as he was thrown back into the ground, while the serene sound of waves filled the air, unchanged. When Izuku opened his eyes, he found himself looking down at a ruffled Katsuki. "Screw you, Deku, and your bullshit Quirk," he groaned from the pile of trash. F-. That hurts. Izuku only gave him a sheepish smile. He then approached and he extended his hand to pull the blonde boy back up. "Need help? Can you stand? Hope you didn't hit your head." In another time, in another life, Katsuki Bakugo would have seen those words as something demeaning, as an insult to his capabilities. But looking at that hand, he saw what it really meant. He reached out and picked his friend's hand. The sun had already set on the horizon when the door at the Bakugo's house opened. Mitsuki was in the middle of finishing dinner, chopping onions, and sliding them into the stew pot. Knowing who was at the door, Mitsuki stopped to work the knife and closed her eyes. She knew how this was going to play out, it was the same thing every day. Just how she knew how easily Masaru folds when confronted by her advances, or how new heroes will always pick the most flashy design for their outfits. Mitsuki always knew how interacting with her son was going to be. She took a deep breath and with her fingers clenching around the hilt, she rounded on her son, pointing the blade at him. "Brat. Do you even know what time it is? Where have dash abruptly, she cut herself off, lowering the kitchen knife as her eyebrows simultaneously crept upward. Dropping the knife next to the thoroughly diced onions, she immediately grabbed for her phone. She took pictures faster than Katsuki could run off, smothering laughter with her free hand, all the while following the fed-up expression on her son's face. "So, Katsuki," she said, voice too innocent to match the demonic smirk on her face, "what happened?" She pointed towards his entire body as he was halfway up the stairs. The woman had one hand covering her mouth, trying to hold back her snickers, while she kept the other pointed toward her son's shirt, a shameful display of what could be considered fashion. He still wore the white sneakers he went out with, but instead of the baggy pants he had in that morning, he was now wearing an All Might theme short and, what she could consider as the main piece of all that, a nice white t-shirt, with the word "Hero Costume" written in the front. Truly, as a costume designer, Mitsuki Bakugo could say that her son, at that moment, was the antithesis of everything she represented. Katsuki, seeing her reaction, was ready to blow up his clothes right there and then, but thankfully, or rather, unfortunately, he was too tired to do so. "I was training the nerd at the beach. He pulled a fast one on me. I fell back and ripped my clothes. I went to Auntie's place and she gave me some of the nerd's clothes." "Happy?" he huffed, making his way up. She might have known how most things would go in her life, but from time to time, she would be faced with a few surprises. The number 10 hero strode confidently into the crowd, each step purposeful and commanding. The stroboscope lights of the warehouse reflected off his polished shoes and bespoke suit, adding to his imposing presence. Amidst the bustling crowd, he had two thoughts on his mind: the raid and the ironic twist of his villainous appearance being advantageous in his line of work. "To think my spot as a villain lookalike would ever come in handy," he joked to himself under the mask, his words unheard by those around him. Years ago, before Kugo reached his current rank of 10th, he had ranked 3rd in a different kind of poll. With his Ursinus looks and towering height, he had used his villainous appearance to infiltrate locations without raising suspicion. By adding a layer of makeup to his face and donning a horned mask, the Orca transformed into a narwhal-like figure. At least he didn't have to worry about reaching first place like Endeavor. Pushing aside the ironic thoughts, Kugo refocused on his surroundings. He navigated through the masked crowd, sensing the smell of booze in the air. The club was packed with various individuals, ranging from low-life thugs to privileged brats seeking pleasure. Even with their faces hidden, Kugo knew how to identify them. People tended to think that just because their faces were hidden, their identities were safe. Fancy clothes, cheap drinks, and the movement of their bodies, all those things told who someone was. However, his target remained elusive. "Do you have a visual, Gang Orca?" a voice came through his communicator. "Not yet," Kugo replied. "There are too many civilians, and it's still early in the night for the exchange." His handler's impatience was evident. The mission involved investigating a new drag circulating the market, potentially connected to the ongoing abduction cases in the area. Kugo's task was simple: infiltrate the event, observe any suspicious transactions, and gather information about the suppliers before apprehending the suspects. Initially skeptical about his handler's optimism, Kugo's doubts seemed justified. The crowded club pulsated with deafening electronic music, seizure-inducing flashing lights, and an ever-shifting crowd of bodies. His enhanced hearing picked up the numerous conversations that filled the air, many meeting the criteria for suspicious transactions, but Kugo disregarded them. He wasn't there for someone buying overpriced trigger or those selling tabs of LSD. Focusing on blending in has proven easy. However, his target remained elusive, surrounded by not-so-innocent individuals that made detection difficult. Overhearing a keyword was proven impossible and a direct line of sight was virtually non-existent. Suddenly, a spotlight illuminated the dance floor, and the crowd fell silent. The lights and music abruptly ceased, and an announcer's voice shattered the silence. "To those returning, I welcome you all again on this fine night. To those new, let me give you the introductions. The dress code? Masks for everyone. Because we're nobody and nobody is really here. This is the no man's land that dreams are made of. We've got deadly moves. Brutal weapons. All quirks are allowed. With no holds, anything is possible. That's because we are the underground masquerade." The crowd erupted with excitement, eagerly anticipating the fights. Amidst the commotion, Kugo discreetly made his way toward the backstage area, unnoticed by the enthusiastic spectators. He couldn't comprehend the appeal of such a barbaric event. He could understand people crowding to see hero fights, but those cases were meant to inspire the younger generation. As Kugo absent-mindedly scratched the paint off his face, he couldn't help but think, this makeup is just making my dry skin worse. Maybe I should have taken that UA teaching job when Nedzu offered it. I wonder if the position is still open. Teaching had crossed his mind multiple times in recent years, however, the timing never seemed right for that kind of change. Although recent events had him worried about the next generation his agency could run on its own even if teaching would cut into his time on the field. Pausing long enough to reach the bar at the corner, Kugo reached for a water bottle and downed it in one go, his quirk making him prone to dehydration. From his lookout point, he patiently waited to spot his target. The exchange was imminent, he just needed confirmation on the deal so the others could storm into this place. Observing his target heading toward one of the VIP boxes upstairs, Kugo followed closely. However, before he could climb up the stair, his attention was abruptly diverted to the ring as a surprising announcement captured everyone's attention. "Is that a kid?" he exclaimed, caught up in the commotion. It wasn't too late to turn back, Izuku knew that. They were only just now approaching the warehouse. He couldn't help but feel that this was the worst training idea Katsuki had come up with so far, but he also understood that it was his only way forward. If he wanted to become a hero and conquer his fear of his own quirk, he had to face this head-on. Regardless, he wasn't too thrilled about it. "Kaken, are you really sure this is a good idea?" Izuku asked nervously, adjusting the All Might bandana covering the lower half of his face, which wasn't that great of a disguise for someone his age. "Yeah, Sheet, it's a great idea. Because it's my idea," Katsuki retorted, his face hidden by a domino mask resembling a lot of his old hero costume drawings. "And we're already here, and I'll kill you if you decide to chicken out now." Trust. Such a simple word, yet it held immense power when put into practice. Heroes relied on trust to use their quirks publicly and fulfill their duty as protectors of society. It was trust that led Izuku to follow Katsuki's instructions, sneaking out of his house to meet him. And it was trust that brought him to the industrial district in the dead of night, hastily dressed and hiding his face behind All Might merchandise. No questions asked. "Of course it's an old warehouse," Katsuki remarked as they arrived at their destination. Typical Kaken, Izuku thought, wondering how his childhood friend managed to find this place. But then again, it was Katsuki. Discovering the location of an underground quirk fight club seemed well within his capabilities. After trudging through the cold night air, they stood before a metal door that screamed secret club. Katsuki, true to form, announced their presence with 3 loud knocks followed by a string of XPLCT swear words. Izuku hoped that was the universal password for places like this. If not, he wasn't quite sure how they would explain themselves or if a set-off bouncer would attack them. Could Izuku play the part of the hero and protect them both? With only a few months of quirk training under his belt, his confidence in a real fight was shaky at best. He couldn't understand why Katsuki had dragged him into this mess when he thought their training was going so well. A small latch on the door slid open, revealing 3 mismatched eyes staring back at them, each a different color. Is that his quirk? Do the green, red, and blue colors hold any significance? Does it grant him different spectra of vision? If wait. This is not the time to analyze his quirk, Izuku scolded himself, snapping back to reality as the man he assumed it was a man, likely the doorman, began speaking. "Get lost, kid. This isn't a place for 2 brats to be at a time like this." Ignoring the warning, Katsuki flashed a wad of yen notes at the small window before it could close. Soon after, the heavy deadbolt slid open, and the rusty door creaked ajar, granting them entry. Izuku followed Katsuki into the dilapidated building as the doorman promptly closed the door behind them. "Kaken, what was that all about?" Izuku inquired, his voice trembling. "What? Did you honestly think a place like this would let us in for free?" Katsuki chuckled. The hallway was dimly lit by a flickering incandescent bulb, its warm yellow glow masking the rust and dust that permeated the place. Throughout the night, Izuku found himself questioning how Katsuki had even heard about this place. Seriously, when did he find the time? Katsuki was always at school 30 minutes early and back home by 4 p.m. With a mere 4 hours left before his self-imposed bedtime, how did he manage to find the existence of an elusive fight club in the city in such a short time? Izuku then realized that they were way past Katsuki's supposed bedtime. Izuku concluded that there was more to his childhood friend than what meets the eye and decided to leave it at that. Lost in his thoughts, Izuku failed to realize they had already left the hallway behind. What he saw ahead was far from his expectations: a lively atmosphere, loud music, people drinking and partying. If he had to guess, the place resembled more a nightclub than anything else, save for the giant caged arena dominating the center of the room. "Yep, Kaken brought me to an illegal fight club," Izuku lamented internally. The arena, measuring 5 meters by 5 meters, loomed above the floor, enclosed by a sturdy cage that sealed off any escape once the match commenced. And they were headed straight for it. "Kaken, what are we doing?" Izuku asked meekly, fearing his suspicions were true. The grin on Katsuki's face said it all. You're here to kick their butts. What are you saying? Izuku stammered in denial. Don't act dumb, Deku. How else are we going to see if your training is paying off? With those words, Izuku found himself ushered into a waiting area filled with what he assumed were other participants. Being the only kid among them made him stand out, a fact he didn't particularly appreciate. I'm going to die here. Trying to suppress his anxiety while he waited, he focused on analyzing the quirks of his fellow fighters, diverting his attention from the impending danger. One fighter caught his interest, an anthropomorphic wolf, with a quirk that resembled a lot hound dogs. Does his quirk work the same way as hound dogs? Unlike hound dog, he lacks mane-like hair. Could that mean wait? Are those metal claws? All his anxiety was forgotten as he spied deep into the quirk dissection of the other fighters. Before he could delve further into his thoughts, the lights went out, and the ring illuminated, stealing his attention. And now, ladies and gentlemen, including those watching from home, place your bets and please be ready for our next event. The one who defeats him will claim it all. Now, let us introduce our reigning champion. If he encounters God, he punches God. If he meets the Buddha, he punches the Buddha. If he crosses paths with you, you'll meet God. The unstoppable barrage of fists. With countless wins and rare losses. Who will challenge our champion? The rapper. The crowd erupted in cheers as a figure stepped into the spotlight. Standing tall at 2 meters with unruly brown hair and a white tank top, the rapper exuded a sense of confidence and familiarity with the ring. Rolling his shoulders, he eagerly clenched his fists. Izuku didn't like the odds of whoever was brave enough to fight him. Just by observing the man, Izuku knew the rapper spelled trouble to anyone who dared to challenge him, not even taking his quirk into consideration. And now, our first courageous warrior who dares to challenge the champion. Though it may be his first fight, don't let his appearance deceive you. The monster that snatches you at night. He is the hidden peril lurking beneath. Behold, here be dragons. With those words, Izuku found himself pushed into the arena, move into a battle he had no say in. As he went through the door, Kugo couldn't feel anything but optimism. While he had his doubts about this sting working, he could not deny how smoothly things were progressing. Normally their targets would not show up, or those who they apprehend would be too low on the command chain to know anything useful. But from what he just spotted, this transaction seemed too big for a pawn to run alone. Besides, something was keeping his instincts buzzing in alertness since he saw the buyers. He wasn't sure if this was his gut feeling or his quirk instincts telling him something, but he was no fool to ignore them both. Nearing the top of the stairs, Kugo used his sonar to scout out the unknown floor. To his luck, his quirk picked no moving objects in the hallway. It seems they were trying to keep a low profile in this exchange, and due to most people preferring to stay on the ground floor near the arena, the rooms above were mostly deserted. He used that opportunity to approach and enter the room next to theirs and monitor the exchange with his ear near their shared wall. If it isn't my favorite Yakuza, a familiar voice greeted him. You sure like to drag your clients to God knows where. We can never know what intentions a client might have, the first man replied, his tone cautious. So we have multiple safe rooms for conducting business. This establishment is just one of the few locations where we engage in our dealings. But you're well aware of that, considering your line of work, Jiren, finished the second. Jiren chuckled, his voice laced with intrigue. Ha, straight to the point, hun? Well, as you may have heard, it's been quite a struggle dealing with support items in the black market lately. Established support companies have been muscling in on our territory. Or so I've heard, he added, a mischievous grin creeping across his face as he lit his cigar. Get to the point, the smaller man interjected impatiently. Now, let's not rush things, Jiren replied smoothly. Between you and me, I've got here an offer of a lifetime. I've heard that you've managed to create something truly remarkable, but you lack an extensive distribution network to move your product around. I am willing to use my position within the union to spread the word about your miracle drag. In exchange, I would like exclusive rights to purchase your entire stock at a wholesale price. The tension in the room thickened as the weight of Jiren's proposition hung in the air, setting the stage for a high-stakes negotiation. Gong. In that split second, time seemed to slow down, and his mind raced to make sense of the sudden turn of events. He could feel the rush of wind against his face, the disorientation clouding his thoughts, and the shock coursing through his chest. Izuku's eyes widened in surprise as he was sent hurtling through the air, his body propelled to the other side of the ring. Before he could fully comprehend what had just happened, Kendo Rappa stood firm, his fist extended, taunting Izuku. Really, kid? That's all you've got? Just give up before I decide to get serious. And the rapper's opening move is a monstrous right jab. Is this fight already over before it even started? The commentator exclaimed, capturing the astonishment of the spectators. Limp and lifeless, Izuku's crumpled form lay exposed for all to see, the devastating impact of Rappa's quirk-infused punch tearing through his hoodie. Although luck was on his side, as the damage seemed superficial, Izuku slowly rose to his feet, assuming a hunched stance, determined not to be defeated so easily. The crowd erupted into cheers at his resilient display. Amazing! It seems the battle is not over yet. Here be Dragons is back up after taking a locomotive right in the chest. And look at that! He seems to be getting ready for a counterattack. As the cheers filled the arena, Izuku struggled to regain his bearings. The world seemed to spin around him, making it difficult to process the lightning-fast strike that had knocked him down. How was he supposed to fight against this guy? While his encounters with Katsuki had become more manageable, thanks to their frequent monthly sparring sessions. But Rapper presented an entirely different challenge. Determined not to back down, Izuku charged at his towering opponent, his fist clenched and his body low to the ground. He hoped that exploiting their height difference would work to his advantage. However, to his dismay, his dash was swiftly met with a relentless barrage of punches that mercilessly pinned him to the floor. Kendo Rappa felt all pumped up as he prepared for his upcoming fight. It had been far too long since he had stepped into the ring for a real brawl. Sure, he had engaged in fights during that time, but they had become monotonous, battling the same 3 opponents over and over again. Hikiji was no fun, always blocking his punches without fighting back, and Toya would accept his challenges, but it would never be a real fight if he kept swinging that stupid sword. Only Rikiya could give him a real fight. The giant sure knew how to throw a punch. Emerging from backstage, Kendo strode towards the ring, fueled by the desire to unleash his power upon whoever challenged him. To him, men were meant to rip and tear each other apart with their own fists. So forgive his excitement as the announcer called out his opponent's name, "Here be Dragons." Kendo couldn't help but find the name a tad pretentious, hoping that his opponent could back up such bold claims. However, his excitement was instantly replaced by outrage as he laid eyes on his opponent. "Hey!" he exclaimed, his voice laced with disappointment after throwing his first punch. The figure lying flat on the ground, barely reaching his stomach, was a green-haired kid sporting an All Might bandana as a mask. The kid hadn't even attempted to block his punch. "The hell are you doing here, kid?" Silence met Kendo's question as the kid slowly rose to his feet. "The kid was able to take one of my punches. This might not be such a letdown after all." Things were starting to look promising for him. "Just so you know," Kendo smirked, relishing the challenge, "I ain't pulling back just 'cause you're a kid." He eyed the kid's determined advance toward him, eager to see what the youngster had in store. Kendo felt conflicted about the situation. He never enjoyed picking on the weak, yet he refused to back down from a fight. Seeing the kid going against him stirred something within him. Rest assured, he would still beat up that kid for sure. It was the least he could do for any opponent brave enough to challenge him. Holding back in a fight would be an insult to anyone fighting you after all. Well, I hope the kid has something planned. For now, he sure is taking my punches like a champ for someone that small. He marveled at the kid's grit. Suddenly, a crimson bloom erupted from the kid's hoodie, and in a rapid 1-2 motion, scarlet tendrils shot toward Kendo's face. Caught off guard, Kendo took the jab square in the jaw, stumbling backward from the kid's unexpected counterattack. To his surprise, the kid rose from the floor with fewer bruises than expected after enduring a barrage of his punches. "Look at that! The dragon is showing his claws. Here be Dragons is finally revealing his quirk. But will that be enough to stop the Rapper?" the commentator exclaimed, capturing the intensity of the moment. The kid maintained a low, quadrupedal stance as he unleashed the 2 tentacles at him, using them like whips to keep Kendo at bay. It was reminiscent of a lion tamer in a circus, and the situation only fueled Kendo's grin. What is this? Am I seeing things? Is the Rapper being kept at a distance by his opponent? Ladies and gentlemen, it's been years since we witnessed something like this. Nice. You're doing great, kid. Kendo shouted, reveling in the exhilaration of finding someone else who could actually block his attacks. The kid's quirk effectively countered his charging barrage, serving as a formidable shield. Although Kendo had no idea what those tentacle things truly were, it was withstanding the brunt of his assault, preventing him from reaching the kid's main body. Throwing strategy aside, Kendo persisted with his relentless onslaught, determined to break through the defense and find a way to dominate the fight. "Mimic, back off. Our client here did offer to buy out our stock. We should at least consider what he has to say. He is offering to be our distributor free of charge, I assume." The room fell into an uneasy silence, each participant contemplating the weight of the decision at hand. After a brief pause, the smaller man reluctantly conceded, "All right, fine. You sure know how to drive a hard bargain." Bingo. Internally, Kugo celebrated. Those words were the confirmation he had been waiting for. It was the signal to initiate the raid and apprehend the criminals. He reached for his comlink, ready to call in the assault, only to be abruptly interrupted by a chilling click behind his head. What do you think you are doing here?" the guard demanded, brandishing a gun. Kugo's mind raced, searching for a plausible excuse to defuse the situation. He sighed inwardly, seems that things were going too well for once. With a tinge of urgency in his voice, he spoke, I got lost. I was looking for the restroom, and I must have taken a wrong turn." The guard glanced at him up and down, expression hardening as his grip on the gun tightened. "Get out of here before I decide to blow your brains out, fish face." Reluctantly, Kugo complied, realizing that his cover was still intact. As the guard escorted him towards the exit, a palpable tension emanated from the duo, causing Kugo's nerves to simmer beneath the surface. The guard's insult stung, but Kugo knew he had heard worse in his life. Passing through the doorway, the guard couldn't resist one final jab at Kugo's expense. "Next time, watch where you're swimming, fish brain," he muttered under his breath with a hint of disgust. "Should have been gone in Jita. That does it," Kugo thought to himself, his eyes narrowing and his patience reaching its limit. With a surge of justified anger, he clenched his fists, ready to retaliate against the guard's taunts. This was no longer just about completing his mission and keeping his cover, it was about fighting for everything he stood up to. "I am a narwhal, not a fish." Kugo's voice boomed with a mix of indignation and defiance. In one swift motion, he unleashed a devastating punch aimed squarely at the guard's face, silencing the insults. As Izuku walked into the ring, everything blurred together, the sound of his steps, the audience cheering, and the loud announcer yelling into the mic. The bell rang, signaling the start of the match, but even that couldn't prepare him for the devastating punch that came his way. His muscles failed to flinch, leaving him defenseless as the impact sent him sprawling across the ring. "That's all you have, kid?" It happened in an instant, too quick for him to react. If this was what awaited him as a hero, he questioned whether he should continue. The realization hit him hard. He doubted he would even pass the entrance exam, let alone make it past the main gate without a hitch. But then, he felt a rush of heat surging from within him. That familiar sensation of growth from his lower back. The vivid red of the muscles of the two tail-like shapes calmed his mind. It had been a while since he last used his quirk outside of training. The feeling of having two extra limbs came rushing back to him. Like riding a bicycle, he jumped right back into action. Coming back to his senses, Izuku realized he was already back on his feet. Looking down, he noticed that his chest had already healed from the punch. He was lucky to survive that. Knowing his opponent had the advantage in close combat, he used his two extra limbs to extend his reach and keep a safe distance. The next moments would come as a haze to Izuku whenever he tried to remember. As he was kept in a stalemate with Rappa's barrage of punches, his hunger only grew as his quirk kept healing him and repairing the damage from his tentacles every time they blocked one of the attacks. The following moments became a haze in Izuku's memory whenever he tried to recall them. He found himself locked in a stalemate with the Rapper, enduring a barrage of punches. But with each strike blocked by his tentacles, his hunger only grew stronger. His quirk kept healing him and repairing the damage, causing his control to wane due to his increasing appetite. He had to keep his hunger from distracting him, but how? Any loss of focus meant taking another bone-breaking punch to the face. Rapper's punches were like jackhammers, each one landed with a bone-breaking impact. "Think, Izuku. Think." He panicked as his stamina decreased with each hit. His quirk must be on his arms. No one can punch this fast. Target the joints. Disable his mobility. Take away his advantage. Driven by instinct, Izuku abandoned his defensive stance and decided to deflect one of Rappa's jabs with his arm. The impact resulted in a sickening crunch of breaking bones. Seizing the split-second opening, Izuku swiftly maneuvered to Rappa's left as the man reared his arm for a follow-up attack. With his tentacle, Izuku wrapped it around Rappa's shoulder, impeding his movement. Strike from above. In that moment, he used his second tentacle to launch him over Rapper's back and with his newly healed arm, delivered a powerful strike aimed to stun his opponent. But to his surprise, nothing happened when he slammed both hands on the sides of Rapper's head. Caught off guard by the unexpected grapple, Izuku struggled to maintain his spot on the man's neck. Rapper's shoulders rotated far enough to reach Izuku, making it difficult for him to hold on. In a sudden JRK, Izuku was flung to the floor once again, losing one of his appendages in the process. As the crimson limb slowly crumbled into fine dust, Izuku found himself with only one appendage remaining. His stamina was draining and he didn't have enough strength left to generate a fully new limb. The hunger gnawing at him threatened to consume his sanity. If he wanted to continue, he needed more blood. If only I could bite him, he thought for a split second, letting out a hiss. No, what am I thinking? Did he seriously consider biting his opponent? Shaking his head to clear his mind, Izuku failed to notice the incoming impact. Seizing the opportunity presented by the kid's momentary daze, Rappa charged forward, his fist aiming for the kid's face. The shrimp barely managed to dodge the blow, his head scraping against Rappa's fist, snatching away a few green curly locks. Reacting swiftly, the kid retaliated with a kick, but Rappa was ready, catching his leg and throwing him aside. Rolling back to his feet, Izuku found Rappa charging at him once again before he could fully turn around. His face slammed against the cage wall. It was all too overwhelming. His eyes turned black, and the red pupils pulsate with each of his heartbeats. He knew he was a goner. Letting his gnawing hunger drive him forward, he wrapped his remaining appendage around his right arm like makeshift gloves, ready to face his prey. Rappa sensed that something had changed. The intensity in the kid's eyes confirmed that this fight was about to become one of the most exhilarating experiences of his life. He realized that the name, "Here Be Dragons," was no longer a joke. This kid intended to kill him. Eager to meet the challenge head-on, Rappa met the incoming fist with one of his own. The clash resonated with a thunderous crack, causing the metal of Rappa's glove to fall onto the floor, shattered, and his knuckles filled with cracks. It was the first time he had encountered something that his fists couldn't withstand. A wide grin split his face. For the second time that day, Rappa was down an arm. Oh? Now we're talking. The same could be said for Izuku. The makeshift gauntlet on his arm began to crumble, red flakes revealing a bruised limb beneath. Now with the advantage, Izuku maneuvered toward Rappa, targeting his weakened right side. However, he didn't anticipate Rappa using his broken hand to jab him in the face. Despite the setback, Izuku seized the opportunity to grab onto the arm and sank his teeth into the man's bloody hand. The intoxicating sweetness of the blood filled Izuku's mouth as it flowed down his throat, restoring his stamina and clearing the fog in his mind. But before he could fully comprehend what he had just done, a loud crash echoed from the bleachers. A man had been thrown out of a window in the VIP rooms. The crowd grew agitated, and panic spread as police forces stormed through the doors. The fight was over. It became every man for himself. The arena staff and participants from the waiting area joined the chaos, fighting against the police and heroes alike. From across the cage, Izuku spotted Katsuki calling out to him. "Get the F out of there, Deku," he shouted, blasting a hole in the cage. "If we get caught here, the hag will kill both of us and give us a second death for giving Auntie a heart attack when she finds out." Izuku quickly scrambled out of the arena, his revitalized strength from the blood aiding his escape. All Rappa could do was watch in awe, the scene before him reminding him of an event almost 10 years ago. He wondered how Tiger Bunny would have enjoyed this night. Kugo would admit that punching that guy through the window into the crowd below was not his best decision. Hopefully, the Yakuza wouldn't escape amidst the chaos. His train of thought was halted by a light tugging on his sleeve. When he turned around, he was surprised by what he saw. "Hi, Gang Orca, sir. It's an honor to meet you," stammered the kid, standing just below his waistline. Gone was the fierce fighter who had faced off against Rappa. Gone were the bloodlust and feral aura that had filled the arena. Instead, the kid's shyness surfaced, and the hero realized that the boy who had exhibited such traits a few moments ago was now timidly extending a notebook and pencil toward him. "I'm sorry if I'm bothering you, sir. But can I get an autograph?" The kid managed to force a smile onto his face, his eyes gleaming with pure excitement despite his evident struggle to remain steady on his feet. Trying his best to push aside the chaos and panic surrounding them, Kugo attempted to speak. However, he would later feel a lot of embarrassment when recalling that exact moment. In his defense, his concussion had clouded his judgment at that time. Instead of taking in the kid for questioning, his ingrained media exposure training took over, compelling him to accept the notebook and momentarily disregard the dangerous situation he was in. With impeccable penmanship, he signed the pages, completely engrossed in the autographing process. After returning the book to its owner, he uttered, "Here you go. Have a nice day," waving as the kid walked away. As soon as the boy disappeared from sight, Kugo paused, his realization hitting him like a flash flood. Gang Orca, do you read?" came a voice through his earpiece. "Yes," Kugo responded. "We managed to secure the targets." "What happened?" Kugo's eyes were left in the direction where the kid fled, leaving the hero to wonder as the capture of the Yakuza heads might not bring much results anyway. "I think I just gave my autograph to a child," he confessed, a mix of disbelief and self-deprecating humor in his voice. "Better not mention in the report that I let a minor leave after fighting in the cage." Kai Chisaki found himself confined within the stark walls of an interrogation room, an aromatic cloud of steaming katsudon wafting from the bowl right before him. The timeline of events was a puzzle in itself. Just a few hours had elapsed since his arrest at the club, and he was taken before a judge. This expeditious legal process contradicted the customary 72-hour buffer after arrest. The anomaly wasn't lost on Kai, it stirred a faint curiosity beneath his mask. After 3 days, Kai got used to his new routine, being woken from his cell, being interrogated without a lawyer for 16 hours, and then being returned to his cell by the end of the day. The Americans are considerably more civilized in their due process. Seated across from him were detectives Kaiji and Tanti, an air of smugness emanated from their looks. They appeared to be veterans in the force, yet from their demeanor, it seemed the department was quite swamped if they assigned his interrogation to these two. They caught way more than expected. For now, he would observe the extent of their interrogation efforts as they approached the 23-day threshold for his indictment. Kai Chisaki, the underboss of the Shaiha Saikai. Quite the important man you are, right? Detective Kenji remarked with a cursory glance over Kai's files. Now, could you explain to us what brings you so far from Osaka? A raise of Kai's brow was his sole response as he got ready to eat his meal. Don't play coy with us, stated Detective Tanti firmly. We know you were having a meeting with Jiren, a well-known broker in the underworld. We've been watching the both of you for quite some time now. Just admit to your involvement now for the sake of efficiency. Retaining his poised demeanor, Kai performed a fluid, choreographed movement, removing his mask and bringing up his food with an elegance that belied his circumstances. Oh, is that so? How intriguing. If there's anything I value, it's efficiency. I'm more than willing to address any concerns you might have. With that, he began to savor his meal. Detective Kenji slammed on the table. Cut the act. We are well aware of your dealings with Jiren. Tell us about that new product of yours, and we might be lenient on the charges against you. Kai closed his eyes at the burst of anger. I must admit, your allegations surprise me. While I acknowledge meeting with Mr. Okuta, our meeting was strictly regarding legal matters. Any perceived crime is a simple misinterpretation of the facts. As for your surveillance, I can only appreciate your dedication to a thorough investigation. Detective Tanti scoffed at Kai's words. You expect us to believe that? We've been on him for weeks. We've secured samples from the drag you brought for your meeting as evidence. Confess now, and we might consider lightening your load before the results arrive. Kai nonchalantly shrugged, the hallmark of indifference. Believe what you want, but the evidence might not support your claims. You may think you're untouchable now, but when the results arrive, you will wish you had been more cooperative right now. Kenji spat, a veiled threat masking his words. I'm sure you have your reasons for suspecting me, but rest assured, my actions have always been within the boundaries of the law, Kai retorted calmly, punctuating his statement by ending his meal. Tanti frowned at Kai's tone. Do you think we're playing games here? We know you, Yakuza, are up to something. I'm sure you do. In the meantime, I believe our time together has reached its end. What the? The door swung open from the entrance of another officer. The newcomer's furry ears flickered briefly as he looked at the detectives before addressing Kai. You're free to leave. Kai readjusted his mask and stood. Thank you for the meal. It was excellent, he said with a fox smile that could be seen through his mask. After his exit, the two detectives were left disconcerted, their confusion and frustration mixing in the sterile air. Why is he being released? We arrested him with a case full of drags. How is possession with intent not applicable here? Detective Tanti's incredulity sought an answer from the officer at the door. The cat officer, taken slightly aback by the abrupt inquiry, replied, We got a call from the lab. Apparently, the tests were expedited, and the results returned negative for any illicit substance. How is that even possible? We got him with 10 kilograms of narcotics. How is that not proof enough? The same question crossed my mind. So when I asked, the lab confirmed that the collected material primarily comprises sugar, salts, and minerals, essentially, energy drink powder. The roars of frustration from the detectives could be heard throughout the station, and Kai couldn't be more blessed by that sound. Parked outside the station, Kai encountered the familiar waiting presence of a black vehicle. Taking the initiative, Kai opened the door and entered the car, already expecting who was inside. Mimic, was this your doing? No, sir. Nemoto was the one who expedited matters with some calls. Good, he nodded. Does our deal with Jiren remain unaffected by this debacle? Yes, sir. Jiren assured us last night that the deal remains unchanged. Excellent. Kai nodded, thanking his subordinate as he settled in. Before we arrive, assemble the bullets. I need to contact the boss about a rat problem at the compound. With a few swift keystrokes, Kai sent the message, the anticipation of action coiling within him. We can't allow the invaluable assistance the good doctor has given us to be spoiled by a few vermin. As the bullet train sped through the early hours of the morning, Izuku sat deep in thought on the plastic seat of the cart, going over the items he had brought with him for the exam. To his side, Katsuki leaned back in his seat, teeth clenched as his patience trickled down from Izuku's mumbling. With double my usual volume of blood, I'm sure I won't go hungry after the exam. Glad that Mom was able to bring home those expired bags. Seeing how I had no problem bringing those jelly pouches filled with blood last month to the written exam, I guess I will be able to use them during the practical. Unless they bar me from bringing food to the exam. Then I could try to drink it all before arriving, but that's not as efficient as taking small doses. Izuku spiraled into anxiety. Can't you shut up, Deku? Screamed Katsuki, if you don't choke from all this panicking, I am going to kill you myself if you faint on the train and cause me to miss the exam. To the surprise of everyone else on the train, that worked to calm the hyperventilating green-haired boy. The rest of the ride went uninterrupted, with both boys staring at the morning horizon. The passing cityscape was familiar to them, each skyscraper in the distance meant they were closer to achieving their dreams. The last 10 months were a long and arduous journey to Izuku, from that faithful meeting with All Might to his training at the beach with Kaken. He used every second he had to get back on track with his dream, even his secret outing to the fight club. That night was a wake-up call to him. Up to that point, he thought himself familiar with fighting, from all the months of training at the beach he had with Katsuki, but after facing Rappa that night, he finally understood, compared to the real deal, he was just a kid playing pretend. He spent the weeks after the fight and his written exams planning how he could maximize his chances at the UA entrance exam. Because he understood that the only reason he survived that fight was due to luck and his Quirk's regenerative abilities. He now knew that if he wanted any chance of surviving a fight at his current level, he had to make use of any tricks he could think of. From timing how long it took him to starve in a fight, to places on his clothes he could hide pockets for his bags, Izuku was able to fill an entire new section of his notebook. With the aid of some forum searches and inspiration from Fat Gum's new sidekick, Izuku got the idea to disguise his blood in some nutritious jelly pouches. While in school, he practiced taking sips from the pouch without being noticed, and to his surprise, he was able to fend off his hunger more easily than normal. He could easily adapt his new design to his hero costume after all. Now all he needed to solve was how to gain access to the extra blood supply. His new strategy had him increase his blood intake. He was already scraping by with his daily 3-bag limit. How in the world would he get a hold of double that amount? He was already nearly starving. From all the fasting he did to get extra blood for the exam. From all the strenuous exercise he would be doing, every extra drop would make a difference. Should he ask the school for assistance? He heard that UA offered assistance to special needs Quirks. He could also play it off as being a request for the support department, but to do that, he would have to tell them about his inability to eat food, and he was already planning on hiding his need for blood. He hadn't even arrived at the gates, and everything was already falling apart. Please, at least let me take my first step towards becoming a hero without any incidents. As he crossed through the open gates of UA, Izuku lost himself in amazement at the towers where his future could be. Izuku couldn't help but look around as he walked. He was momentarily brought back by Kaken's yell, "Get moving, Deku, before we're late." Ignoring his friend's warning, he mesmerized himself at the statues of previous alumni. The elation at that moment made him forget all his worries. Even his constant hunger was muted in that instant of bliss. But dreams must come to an end, and in Izuku's case, the time arrived when his foot caught a slightly uneven cobblestone, his mind came crashing back to reality, and all he could think was that tripping right after crossing the gates was not the best start to things. How could he ever face his mom after telling her that he failed because he lost consciousness before the exam even started? The reassurance that even if he broke his nose, it would heal within a few minutes provided him with some comfort. Surprisingly, the impact never occurred. Instead, Izuku felt something gripping him, keeping him up in the air. "Sorry for intruding," said a voice on his side. Turning to look, he saw the source of said voice. A tentacle mouth greeted him. "I felt it wouldn't be nice to get injured before the exam started." Just as he was picked up, the student gently placed him upright on the ground before nodding and moving toward the main building. The stranger easily stood far taller than himself, his face mostly covered by a mask and his white hair. At that moment, Izuku noticed the strange peculiarities of the student. Instead of a middle school uniform, the stranger wore jeans and a tank top, and in addition to the mask, a blue camo shawl was wrapped around his neck. Izuku soon understood why. After seeing the boy's arms, there were 6 of them sprouting from his elbows. "Hey, Deku!" shouted a voice from the building door. "Stop daydreaming, or you are gonna make us late." Hearing that voice, Izuku was drawn back to the present. He soon realized that Katsuki had already made his way to the main building while he was distracted. Thank you," he said to the 6-armed student as he caught up to Katsuki. It had been a tough journey to get there. All the training, sweat, and blood to make his long-dead dream a reality again. All he needed to face was the final hurdle before he could call himself a hero in training. Welcome, dear listeners, to this live event. Can I hear a resounding "hey" from our audience? Hey! His enthusiasm was met with a lackluster response. Seems like we've got a tough crowd. No worries, my potential heroes. It's time for me to lay out the instructions for your practical exam. Are you ready? Yay! From the vibrant podium, Present Mike stood in all his flamboyant glory as projectors flared to life, casting a map of the school's training grounds onto the screens behind him. Each location was meticulously labeled from A to G, encircling the main school edifice. Listen up, because here's how the test rolls. You've got a neat 30 minutes to show your stuff. During that time, you're diving into a simulated rescue scenario. Grab whatever gear you can carry, folks. And once this spiel's done, off to your assigned test fields you go. Izuku breathed easier at the news that he could take whatever he needed with him. The thought of being cut off from his blood supply had been gnawing at him since he left home. Now, his main concern was making sure he didn't run dry before the clock ran out. Each site is a recreation of a post-disaster scenario. Your mission? Locate faux civilians and hustle them to safety in a shelter. Points are in play for every faux civilian you take to safety. Just remember, no points if they bite the dust before hitting the shelter. The slide transitioned to a robot with a prominent C emblem on its chest, its oversized head toppled, a visual cue for death. Your quirks are your allies here, folks. Hunt down and ferry those faux civilians to the nearest shelter. That's the name of the game, everyone. Oh, and FYI, deliberately attacking other examinees or the faux civilians? Absolutely off limits. May I ask a question? The interruption burst forth from the audience. I can't help but notice the assortment of robots on this handout. For UA, Japan's top-notch academy, such an oversight is glaringly out of place. The student's finger indicated the images on the sheet as he spoke. We're all striving to be heroes here, and a slip-up like this is uncharacteristic of an institution as esteemed as ours. The boy with azure locks stood, demanding clarity. All right. Good catch, examinee 7111. But listen up, those other 4 robots? 0 points. They're faux villains programmed to pounce on you without warning. They're obstacles, ones you can sidestep or engage at the expense of time or your faux civilian safety. Understood. Thank you for the clarification, sir. I apologize for my outburst. The student seemed to settle down, retaking his seat with quiet composure. Alrighty then, that's a wrap for instructions. And now, as tradition goes, I'm leaving you with our school motto. Go beyond. Plus ultra. The resounding chorus echoed throughout the auditorium. Nedzu arrived at the observation room riding inside Aizawa's scarf like a joey in its mother's pouch. The underground hero pushed open the double doors with his feet, scarf shifting slightly under the principal's light weight. Stepping into the room, they are met with a half-dozen pro heroes already waiting. Screens lined the far wall, currently displaying the empty training grounds where the practical exam would soon begin. A few teachers murmured to one another over coffee. From the outside windows, the last echoes of present mix instructions still reverberated through the air, plus ultra. Followed by the collective roar of nervous examinees psyching themselves up. With a light hop, Nedzu dismounted Aizawa's scarf, landing neatly on the edge of his chair at the head of the long conference table. The principal brushed imaginary dust off his suit and said, "Another year, another batch of prospective future students arriving at our fine institution. I hereby open this year's entrance exam meeting." Nedzu said cheerfully. Another year of chaos, Aizawa thought. By now, every teacher understood what this meeting meant, the true beginning of UA's yearly storm. The exam instructions had just finished outside, the applicants were being ushered to staging areas, unaware of how thoroughly their every move would soon be scrutinized. The staff took their seats. Screens showed multiple feeds of the buses arriving at the training grounds, staff tablets glowed as they loaded, and several heroes murmured quietly to one another as they adjusted their seating. It was the same every year, yet there was an undercurrent this time, a subtle charge in the tension none of them could quite name. I don't wish to take long, so I will be brief. This earned him a few discreet snorts. Nedzu was never brief. As you all know, Nedzu began, folding his paws atop a neat stack of folders. Today marks the beginning of UA's annual practical exam. For the students outside, it is a day of dreams. For us, his whiskers twitched in amusement. Paperwork. A polite ripple of chuckles spread across the room. Before we officially distribute this year's batch of applicant files, Nedzu continued, I would like to officially welcome our newest members of staff, All Might, who will be teaching third-year heroics, and Gang Orca, who will be taking on the third-year management course. Sitting at the end of the table was All Might in his lanky, emaciated form. He straightened instinctively when Nezu gestured to him, though his skeletal frame made the action look more like a gust of wind might topple him. On his left was Gang Orca. His massive, imposing frame was enlarged when placed next to the current #1 hero. Both heroes received a round of applause. Midnight whistled, Cementos clapped politely, and even Aizawa gave a lazy nod. All Might offered a bright grin. Gang Orca bowed his head respectfully. Now then, Nezu chirped, let's get to business. In each of the folders before you, you'll find the files of all 910 applicants for the hero course, split into each designated testing zone. As some of you are already aware, he continued, voice smoothing into a more serious tone, due to this year's test changes, rescue will be the primary focus of this exam while villain points will be based on each applicant's displayed combat capabilities. Took long enough, Aizawa muttered, rubbing sleep from his eyes, his voice just loud enough to be heard from under his capture scarf. The old system let too many slip through the cracks or pass with luck alone. Midnight elbowed him. Nezu continued unperturbed. In light of recent events in Japan, the board urges us to place greater emphasis on tactical awareness and response under pressure. We will still consider combat potential, of course, but this year's emphasis will be on civilian protection and threat assessment. Villain points will be granted at staff discretion. Midnight tapped her pen against her lip. So, a more flexible scoring system. This'll shake up the applicant pool. Cementos sighed softly. Given the recent events? I can't say I disagree. Nezu's whiskers twitched. Indeed. The room quieted. They all knew what recent events meant. As always, I must remind you, heteromorph discrimination is becoming more prevalent nationwide. Some of our applicants may face unfair biases outside these walls. Others may have lived through difficulties that will impact their behavior during the exam. Security has been increased accordingly. Gang Orca's jaw tensed. 13 shifted uncomfortably. Do we have reason to worry about targeted aggression from other examinees? Not specifically, Nezu said. But we should be mindful. Our aim is to prevent incidents, not merely react to them. Gang Orca clicked his tongue thoughtfully. Any potential standouts? Aizawa's visible eye opened a fraction more. Any students in particular we should keep an eye on? Oh yes, Nezu replied, unable to hide the gleam in his eyes. Several fascinating applicants this year. A few with remarkable potential, and a few with combinations that could be dangerous if not properly guided. All Might leaned forward, curiosity piqued. Dangerous in what way? Several ways. Nezu tapped the screen again, and a series of applicant profiles appeared, each marked with notes. A boy with a combustible mutation-type quirk who's been involved in altercations at school, unclear whether he was victim, perpetrator, or both. A girl from a rural village with a quirk that causes an involuntary fear response in others. We may need to monitor her interactions. Nezu smiled a polite, perfectly harmless smile that somehow held an immense weight. That, he said lightly, is why we are teachers. He tapped a folder near his paw. On a more optimistic note, Nezu added, the applicant pool this year is particularly diverse. A strong mix of power types, mutations, support-oriented quirks, and even a few unusual capabilities we haven't seen in previous exams. He gestured to the neatly arranged, color-coded stacks of folders spread across the table. Please take whichever testing zone draws your attention. We will begin our notes as soon as the exam starts. The teachers reached for the spread assortment of files, skimming, flipping, murmuring assessments under their breath. All Might found himself pausing on one particular name. This boy, incredible potential, but reckless. And this one, her file doesn't explain why her eyes look so haunted. Gang Orca's brows furrowed. This kid. Aizawa pinched the bridge of his nose. Another kid with explosive tendencies. Fantastic. Outside, a distant siren signaled the countdown to the start of the exam. Nezu folded his paws, tail curled neatly around the chair leg. With that, he said, voice calm and bright over the rising chaos outside, let us begin this year's entrance exam. Okay, you can do this, Izuku murmured to himself, hands trembling beneath the folds of his rain poncho. The plastic rustled softly with each nervous shift, the garment hanging loose enough to hide the many, well-hidden inside pockets pressed against his torso. He could feel the chill from the packs as they cooled his body, a good distraction from his accelerated pulse. The plaza outside Battle Center B was packed with applicants, a living sea of excited teens. Some stretched. Some trash-talked. Some paced, others hyped themselves up for the challenge about to start. Izuku swallowed hard and tried to stand on his toes to look past them all, searching for a familiar spiky hair silhouette. But Katsuki was nowhere to be found. Different exam sites, he reminded himself, exhaling shakily. UA wouldn't let schoolmates compete together. Too much of an advantage? Too many ways to interfere? Focus. Don't get distracted. Not now. He bounced on the ball of his feet, burning off nervous energy before it could overwhelm him. The poncho swayed with each hop. A few examinees glanced back at him with mild confusion, but he hardly noticed. Objective 1, find civilians. Objective 2, take them to shelters. Objective 3, avoid combat. He repeated the sequence like a mantra. Over and over. No fighting if you can avoid it. No going all out. Keep hunger in check. He could already feel it in the back of his throat, a faint dryness, the internal ache that told him his quirk was awake but calm. Good. Stay that way. The loudspeakers crackled. Examinees. Prepare for practical exam starts now. Present Mick's voice roared through the speakers. Izuku's muscles stiffened. His breathing quickened. His heartbeat thudded in his ears. The poncho suddenly felt too warm, too heavy, too tight over his chest. The giant steel gate slammed open. Go go go. There are no starting signals in real battles. The mass of examinees surged forward like a breaking wave, and Izuku ran with them fast enough to blend in, slow enough not to burn through his stamina. His poncho fluttered behind him, his breath steadying as he hit the streets of the mock city. Find civilians. Avoid combat. Save energy. Save energy. Save. An explosion sounded to his right. From the echoes, it was quite nearby. Izuku skidded around a corner into a ruined street and spotted a civilian robot pinned under a collapsed girder. Its synthetic voice crackled for help. Izuku carefully approached the helpless robot. His heightened reflexes allowed him to navigate the rubble without triggering any further collapse. Hey, you're okay, he said softly, hands slipping under the broken concrete. He wedged his shoulder under the beam, his boosted strength allowing him to lift the weight just enough to slide the bot out. I've got you. I've got. A piercing metallic shriek shattered his focus. A robot landed behind him, its heavy hydraulic claws carving into the pavement. Izuku's blood ran cold. His first instinct was to flee. Move. He snatched the civilian bot into his arms and sprinted, dodging through narrow streets and leaping over charred cars. He was breathing hard now, the familiar dryness beginning to ache in the back of his throat, a sign of his hunger emerging. Don't fight. Don't fight. Not unless you have to. He risked a glance back. The enemy bot barreled through obstacles like a train, its sensors locked firmly onto him. Gotta lose it, his voice cracked as he pivoted into an alleyway. The alley ended in a dead-end wall. For a moment, the sound of mechanical footsteps faded. Izuku turned, preparing to vault upward, when the wall beside him exploded inward. A hulking enemy unit burst through the concrete. No! Izuku roared, twisting his body to shield the civilian robot from the raining debris. Chunks of stone and twisted rebar slammed into his back, shredding his poncho and shirt. He felt the impact, the sudden weight slammed into his back, the sharp taps and blunt thuds striking his skin in rapid succession. Chunks of concrete bounced and grounded across his shoulders, but no pain. The pebbles stung like raindrops. His resilient, cut-proof skin absorbed the blow. However, the same could not be said about the dust that exploded around him, filling his nose and mouth with a choking, chalky dryness. The sudden shock acted like a dinner bell for his metabolism. His hunger spiked from a faint itch to an audible rumble. Hi! It's getting too high, he gasped, his eyes beginning to shift to a black scara with pulsating red pupils. Izuku's hand quickly pulled out one of his blood pouches and rapidly squeezed the crimson liquid down his throat. Izuku gasped, blinking in shock at the pleasant satiation. Gone was the dryness on his mouth, the itchiness of hunger. Gone was the fatigue from his chase and soreness on his back. It's gone? I didn't feel that. I'm stronger? Even tougher than before? His moment of respite came to an abrupt end as the robot advanced towards him, sensory lights flashing red. Izuku could feel the urge to simply uncoil his tails and shred the machine into scrap metal, but he held it back, jaw locked. He refused to let his tails out. The exertion of growing those red, muscular appendages would spike his hunger to dangerous levels. Not now that he finally managed to contain it. He had to be quick. Resourceful. He remembered his previous sparring sessions with Bakugo and Rappa. Target the joints. Disable mobility. Instead of a wild brawl, Izuku waited until the robot lunged. He ducked under the mechanical arm, his movements a blur of speed, and drove a single, precise punch into the robot's joint. The metal buckled. As the machine toppled, he followed up with a crushing blow to the ocular sensor, tearing through the circuit housing with his bare hand to disable its brain. He landed in a crouch, gasping, his heart thundering like a trapped bird. The hunger was clawing back at his insides now. He fumbled with a pocket, yanked out another jelly pouch filled with blood, and drained it in a single, desperate gulp. The sweetness cleared the fog in his mind, though the near loss of control left him trembling. "It's okay now," he whispered, his eyes reverting to green. "I've got you." He turned to pick the civilian robot up and fulfill his objective. His heart stopped. The robot lay motionless on the pavement. Its oversized head, marked with the DC emblem for civilians, had popped clean off during the struggle and lay 3 feet away in the dust. "No points if they bite the dust," present mix warning echoed in his mind. Izuku stared at the decapitated machine, the silence of the mock city suddenly heavy. He had fought so hard to remain a hero, to keep his hunger in check and his movements precise. Panic sparked again, but this time it wasn't the hunger. It was the fear of failure. Without a word, he turned and sprinted back into the main road. Shoji Mizo moved through the wreckage of Battle Center B with the practiced efficiency, 4 of his 6 arms currently occupied with the weight of 2 faux civilian robots he had fished out of a collapsed storefront. His multiple ears sprouted from the ends of his tentacle-like limbs twitched constantly, filtering the cacophony of the mock disaster, the cries for help, the grind of treads, the booming explosions, and the desperate shouts of other examinees. He was getting close to the nearest civilian shelter when he rounded a corner and skidded to a halt. In the middle of the street, the green-haired boy he had helped at the gate stood frozen over a pile of rubble. From his elevated vantage point, Shoji could see the specific source of the boy's despair. A civilian robot lay splayed in the dust, its head having popped off and rolled several feet away, probably during a previous skirmish, considering the villain robot lying in scraps next to the kid. The boy in the poncho looked small and shattered, his hands hovering over the broken machine as if he could somehow fix it. The exam siren wailed, a reminder that time was a luxury none of them possessed. Shoji watched as the student slapped his own cheeks, the fabric of his poncho rustling as he forced himself to move. The boy sprinted toward a nearby building where another civilian bot was calling for help, but as he reached it, a tank-like robot burst through the street, launching its payload at a pair of terrified examinees who were running with their own rescued robots. Shoji adjusted his grip on his own rescues, preparing to run at the opportunity, but the greenette was faster. Without a second of hesitation for his own score, the boy abandoned his path to the new civilian bot. He threw himself in the path of the pursuing robot, his body absorbing a volley of projectiles that would have knocked out anyone else. "Go! Get them to the shelter," the kid roared at the other students, his voice ragged. Shoji watched through an eye tentacle as the 2 examinees scrambled to grab their own civilian bots and fled toward the safe zone. The one in the poncho didn't follow. He stayed in the kill zone to halt the pursuit. He wasn't even going for the finishing blows initially, he was acting as a living shield, positioning himself so the robot's sensors stayed locked on him while the street cleared of other civilian targets. "Move it!" Shoji yelled to the examinees around him, his 6 arms pumping as he hurried his own robots to the shelter. Even after Shoji reached the shelter himself, the boy kept distracting the robots as more examinees ran with their civilians to the shelter. The boy's movements were becoming more frantic as the fight dragged on, his breathing shallow. Shoji's ears picked up the low, feral growl from what he guessed was the boy's stomach, his fingers curling into fists as he delayed the attacking robots. He was soon becoming a beacon to most approaching robots and examinees. A student with a mutation quirk tripped, the greenette was there to haul him up and shove him toward safety. A scorpion-like robot jabbed its stinger at a girl, the greenette's poncho tore apart as ichor-like tails emerged through its back, lashing out to crush the robot before it could reach. He was being the perfect lifesaver, and yet, by Shoji's count, the kid hadn't actually secured a single civilian for himself at that time. He was the barrier that allowed everyone else to succeed, standing alone in a sea of scrap metal while his own timer ran out. Suddenly, the ground groaned with a weight that made the previous explosion seem like firecrackers. Shoji felt his own blood run cold. A shadow that eclipsed entire city blocks fell over the street as the skyscraper-sized robot rumbled into view. Izuku was completely lost. After his first attempt to secure a civilian failed, he tried again. Then again. Then again, and again. Every time, his chest tightened as the civilian bot in his arms jittered when he passed by other examinees being cornered by the attacking robots. And every time, he would give his civilian to a passing by examinee and intervene. His fingers curled. His vision narrowed. His heart thundered. "I said avoid combat. I said I wouldn't. I said," yet, his body moved before he could even process the fear. Something primal surged up through his limbs, hot and sharp like adrenaline, and moved him forward towards the danger. "I don't have time for you," Izuku roared. He leapt higher and faster than he intended, slamming his fist into the robot's chest plate with a crack like splitting steel. His arm punched clean through, tearing out a tangle of circuits. The machine sputtered and collapsed instantly. Both of the cornered students looked up at Izuku, the poncho now in tatters billowed over the sunlight. They thanked Izuku for the save, not knowing who he was or why he helped them, and darted towards the shelter with their bots. The high from the adrenaline was finally catching up to Izuku. His legs finally gave out after his somersault to the top of the robot. Izuku landed hard, skidding on the metal plates towards the ground. His knuckles tingled. He staggered to stand up. His heart hammered. Too much, he gasped. That took too much. He reached into the hidden pockets of his torn poncho, fingers fumbling with his last blood pouch, a cold, crinkled bag of AB+ that tasted like sweet, creamy ice cream and salvation. He drained it in one desperate gulp. Warmth surged through him in a dizzy rush as he felt his strength returning, the steadiness in his legs, and the fatigue vanishing as the hunger backed down, but not completely. Still low, he reassured himself, chest rising and falling. Just, not as low. Around him, enemy robots fell to other exam takers. Some charged Izuku. He tried to avoid them, remembering the cost, remembering the hunger that clawed a little more at him each time he exerted himself. But his body always moved before he could think. Jumping in front of robots to buy time for other examinees. Izuku's lungs burned with every ragged breath, his vision blurring as the world took on a rhythmic, pulsing throb that matched his frantic heartbeat. He ripped open his poncho pocket, but he was already out of pouches. Hunger, rising. Not good. Keep going. Find another civilian. Don't fight again. Don't. A seismic roar shattered his thoughts. A final, towering robot emerged from between the skyscrapers, a mountain of olive-drab steel that turned the street into dust as it moved. Izuku stared up at it, heart plummeting. No, 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 no. In its shadow, Izuku saw them, a group of examinees paralyzed by terror in the path of the juggernaut. His hunger spiked to a dangerous high, raking down his insides like hot coals. The dark side of his quirk hissed in the back of his mind, blood bags. An old feral instinct that saw the panicked students as nourishment, as something that could end his current dilemma. He could feel his mouth salivating at the thought of warm blood going down his throat, the urge to pounce on the paralyzed prey and quickly make do of the colossal robot. No, he grunted, biting down on his lip to jolt himself back. I will not lose control. He locked onto a cluster of examinees pinned under fear. He didn't think. He moved. His body launched forward before his brain could catch up. His two blood-red appendages tore through the back of his poncho like living cables of muscle, lashing out with a mind of their own. With surgical precision, they snagged the group of examinees, pulling them back near the entrance of the shelter. Go! Run, he shouted as the students scrambled away. Then, he turned to the Colossus. Izuku charged, his blackened eyes locked on the machine's sensor array. The robot's arm came down with the force of a falling building, but Izuku twisted midair, a blur of red and green. He slammed into the metal plating of its forearm, his enhanced strength allowing him to gouge handholds into the steel as if it were wet clay. He scrambled up the limb, a frantic, spider-like ascent fueled by pure adrenaline and the last of his energy. The robot jerked its arm skyward in a violent, corrective motion. The sudden shift in momentum acted like a catapult, launching Izuku high into the air, far above the tallest buildings in the fake city. As he hung at the peak of the arc, the world went silent. As a final instinctive act, Izuku wrapped one of his tail-like appendages tightly around his arm, reinforcing the bone and muscle with the crimson mass of his own quirk. I am not a villain, he thought, his vision narrowing into a red-tinted pinpoint as he plummeted. As long as I use my time to save others, I am a hero. A time limit does not define me. He struck the zero-pointer's head with a thunderous crack. His reinforced arm pierced through the armor plating, tearing through the internal circuitry and the central command hub. The Colossus groaned, its red eyes flickering out before it collapsed into a heap of scrap metal. Izuku rolled onto the pavement, his clothes reduced to rags by the impact and debris, though his resilient skin remained unscathed. The silence that followed was absolute, save for the faint whirring of the dying machine. Too much. I used too much. I can't, my hunger it's. He tried to stand, but his legs were leaden weights. The hunger was no longer a dull ache, it was a screaming void that threatened to consume his entire mind. Black spots danced in his vision. He had nothing left, no pouches, no energy, and no will to keep the monster inside any longer. Before the feral instinct could fully take hold, the darkness claimed him, and Izuku Midoriya collapsed into unconsciousness as the exam sirens wailed their conclusion.
Okay, sadly the chapter is over, and if you enjoyed the video just leave a like, and subscribe with post notification, so when the next chapter is ready, you will be notified. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.